stretching beyond the muddy banks of the Rhine, where Roman legions had for centuries peered into the seemingly boundless expanse of dark forests and treacherous marshlands, lay a world poised to fundamentally challenge every core tenet Rome held regarding civilization, warfare, and conquest. Germania in the 1st century BC, far from being the barbaric wasteland later depicted by Roman propaganda, was in fact a complex mosaic of diverse tribal confederations. Each possessed distinct territorial claims, sophisticated social hierarchies, and formidable military traditions, all honed and evolved over centuries of intense intertribal warfare and widespread migration. The geographic reality of Germania presented immediate and formidable challenges to any aspiring conqueror. Vast, dense oak and beech forests stretched for hundreds of miles, their impenetrable expanse broken only by winding rivers, treacherous bogs, and scattered clearings where Germanic communities had painstakingly carved out their settlements. These formidable woodlands were not merely passive obstacles, they were active participants in Germanic military strategy. The tribes had cultivated an intimate and encyclopedic knowledge of every hidden path, every defensible ridge, and every treacherous marsh that could effectively engulf an invading army. Rivers such as the Weser, Ems, and Liper functioned as both vital transportation arteries and natural, often formidable, boundaries between tribal territories. Their meandering courses traversed landscapes that could shift dramatically from solid ground to deadly quagmire within a mere few hundred paces. The Cherusci tribe occupied the central region nestled between the Weser and Ella rivers, effectively controlling territory that encompassed modern-day Lower Saxony and significant portions of North Rhine-Westphalia. Their settlements typically clustered along fertile river valleys, where the soil was most productive. These communities generally consisted of rectangular wooden longhouses, complemented by smaller structures dedicated to storage, crafts, and the housing of livestock. Archaeological evidence compellingly reveals that Cherusci communities practiced a diversified mixed agriculture, adeptly combining grain cultivation with extensive cattle herding. Furthermore, they maintained impressive and extensive trade networks that facilitated the acquisition of prized amber from the distant Baltic coast and essential iron from local bog deposits. Indeed, the Cherusci had cultivated a formidable reputation as fierce warriors, their infantry tactics prioritizing exceptional speed and intricate coordination, a stark contrast to the rigid formations typically favored by Mediterranean armies. To the south and east, the Chatti exerted control over the mountainous regions of what would later develop into Hesse. Their territory stretched strategically along the upper reaches of the Weser and its numerous tributaries. The Chatti particularly distinguished themselves through their exceptional discipline and highly organized military structure, effectively maintaining what Roman observers would later characterize as a quasi-professional warrior class. In contrast to many Germanic tribes that relied primarily on seasonal campaigns, the Chatti had pioneered and developed robust systems for sustained military operations, including sophisticated logistics networks capable of reliably supplying their armies during extended campaigns. Their settlements powerfully reflected this martial focus, often featuring fortified hilltop positions strategically overlooking crucial river crossings and vital mountain passes. The Marsy inhabited the regions situated between the Ruhr and Lippe rivers, a territory distinctly characterized by dense, ancient forests interspersed with fertile river valleys. The Marsy had earned widespread recognition as exceptionally skilled metalworkers, their master smiths meticulously producing high-quality weapons and tools that were extensively traded throughout the Germanic world. Their deeply held religious practices often centered around sacred groves, within which tribal assemblies regularly convened to settle disputes and meticulously plan military campaigns. Roman intelligence reports would later identify the Marsy as particularly fierce and unyielding opponents of foreign occupation. Their formidable warrior bands were renowned for conducting devastating night raids against enemy camps and crucial supply lines. Along the Lower Rhine, the Brucker controlled territory that encompassed significant parts of modern-day North Rhine-Westphalia and the Netherlands. Their exceptionally strategic position afforded them the ability to closely monitor Roman activities along the river frontier, while simultaneously maintaining crucial connections with tribes situated deeper in Germania's interior. The Brucker had developed an extensive and sophisticated knowledge of riverine warfare, adeptly utilizing shallow draft vessels to conduct rapid and decisive strikes against enemy positions before expertly disappearing into the intricate maze of waterways that uniquely characterized their homeland. Their settlements often featured sophisticated wooden palisades and robust earthworks, designed to be quickly abandoned and then strategically reoccupied as tactical situations dynamically demanded. Broadly speaking, Germanic society operated according to fundamental principles that Roman observers found both profoundly fascinating and, at times, deeply troubling. Germanic leadership structures consistently emphasized personal charisma and proven military competence, rather than relying on hereditary succession or administrative efficiency. War chiefs, for instance, typically gained authority through a continuous string of successful raids and decisive battles. Their elevated status was directly dependent on their ability to effectively distribute spoils among their loyal followers and to continually attract new, ambitious warriors to their bands. This dynamic fostered a highly fluid political environment where alliances shifted frequently, and ambitious leaders constantly sought opportunities to further enhance their reputations through notable martial achievements. The institution of the comitatus formed the very backbone of Germanic military organization. Young, aspiring warriors formally bound themselves to established chiefs through solemn personal oaths of loyalty, thereby creating formidable military brotherhoods that often transcended traditional tribal boundaries. These dedicated warrior bands typically lived within their leader's hall, sharing food, weapons, and the valuable proceeds of successful campaigns. This symbiotic relationship imposed profound mutual obligations. Chiefs were unequivocally expected to provide for their followers' material needs and to consistently lead them to victory, while the warriors, in turn, pledged to fight valiantly to the death rather than survive their leader's defeat. This highly effective system thus produced exceptionally motivated and cohesive fighting forces, whose intrinsic unity often proved superior to armies held together by mere discipline alone. Germanic warfare strategically emphasized mobility, the element of surprise, and an intimate, unparalleled knowledge of local terrain. Warriors typically fought on foot, formidably armed with spears, shields, and distinctive single-edged swords known as spade. Their shields were characteristically large and round, meticulously constructed from wooden planks bound with sturdy iron rims and featuring distinctive boss designs that could even serve as effective offensive weapons in the brutal confines of close combat. Spear points, meanwhile, were skillfully crafted from high-quality iron, often elegantly decorated with intricate patterns that proudly indicated their owner's elevated status and martial achievements. The appearance of Germanic warriors was meticulously designed to intimidate their adversaries as much as to provide protection. Many warriors vividly painted their shields with fearsome, often grotesque, designs. They bleached their hair with lime for an imposing look, and frequently adorned themselves with captured enemy equipment, proudly displaying them as war trophies. Germanic tactical doctrine heavily favored the formidable wedge formation, famously known as the cuneus. In this highly effective configuration, the most experienced and veteran warriors formed the sharp, penetrating point, while younger, often less seasoned, fighters provided the crucial mass and irresistible momentum directly behind them. This potent formation could punch through enemy lines with devastating effect, proving particularly lethal when skillfully employed against opponents wholly unfamiliar with its unique dynamics. Germanic armies also made extensive and sophisticated use of feints, ambushes, and deceptive false retreats, shrewdly taking advantage of their superior and intimate knowledge of local geography to draw unsuspecting enemies into highly disadvantageous positions. Night attacks were particularly common, with warriors employing terrifying war cries and the thunderous clash of weapons against shields to create profound psychological effects that could effectively shatter enemy morale even before hand-to-hand combat truly began. The earliest documented contact between Romans and Germanic tribes prominently occurred during the late Republic, when intrepid Roman merchants began venturing beyond the Rhine in search of coveted amber, valuable furs, and unfortunate slaves. These nascent commercial relationships established patterns of interaction that would profoundly persist for centuries, with Germanic chieftains regularly acquiring Roman manufactured goods, fine wines, and various luxury items in exchange for raw materials and captives taken during often brutal intertribal warfare. Archaeological excavations have compellingly revealed Roman coins, pottery, and intricate metalwork in Germanic settlements dating to the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, thus indicating that these early trade networks were far more extensive and sophisticated than contemporary literary sources might suggest. Diplomatic missions soon followed these initial commercial contacts, as Roman governors increasingly sought to gather crucial intelligence regarding Germanic political structures and military capabilities. These early embassies proved revelatory, unveiling the unexpected complexity of Germanic society to Roman observers who had initially, and often erroneously, assumed that tribes beyond the Rhine were merely simple barbarian confederations lacking any sophisticated political institutions. To their surprise, Roman diplomats discovered that Germanic chiefs maintained elaborate courts, conducted formal negotiations strictly according to established protocols, and possessed remarkably detailed knowledge of broader Mediterranean political developments. Furthermore, some Germanic leaders had even gone so far as to learn Latin and employed Roman advisors directly within their households. Military encounters during this initial period remained relatively limited and predominantly defensive in nature. Germanic raids across the Rhine frequently prompted Roman punitive expeditions, while, conversely, Germanic tribes occasionally provided valuable mercenary forces for Roman campaigns in Gaul. These reciprocal interactions allowed both sides to meticulously study each other's military methods and to subsequently develop effective tactical countermeasures. Roman commanders quickly noted the impressive effectiveness of Germanic infantry, particularly within heavily forested terrain, while Germanic chiefs, for their part, keenly observed Roman engineering capabilities and the advanced logistical systems that enabled sustained campaigns far from established bases of operation. The truly transformative moment in Roman-Germanic relations, however, occurred when Gaius Julius Caesar launched his groundbreaking expeditions across the Rhine in 55 and 53 BC. These audacious campaigns, though remarkably brief, fundamentally altered Roman perceptions of Germanic potential and established crucial precedents that would profoundly influence imperial policy for generations to come. Caesar's first crossing involved the construction of a massive, unprecedented timber bridge spanning the Rhine near modern-day Koblenz, an astonishing feat of engineering that not only unequivocally demonstrated Roman technological superiority but also served as a powerfully intimidating psychological statement about Roman capabilities and resolve. The bridge itself represented a veritable marvel of military engineering, meticulously constructed in a mere 10 days by Caesar's skilled legionaries. Its construction employed sophisticated techniques that seamlessly combined Roman architectural knowledge with ingenious adaptations to the challenging local conditions. Massive wooden piles were expertly driven deep into the riverbed at precise angles specifically designed to resist the Rhine's formidable current, while robust horizontal timbers formed a sturdy roadway capable of supporting the immense weight of entire legions, complete with all their equipment and extensive baggage trains. This colossal structure stretched approximately 400 meters across one of Europe's major rivers. Its astonishing construction was witnessed firsthand by numerous Germanic tribes who had never before seen such an undertaking even attempted, much less completed with such unprecedented speed and precision. Caesar's swift 18-day campaign beyond the Rhine, while achieving only limited territorial objectives, yielded enormous propaganda value. His forces notably encountered the Sugambri and various other Germanic tribes, engaging in several skirmishes that clearly demonstrated Roman tactical superiority in open combat, yet simultaneously revealed the inherent challenges of operating effectively within Germania's dense, forested terrain. The campaign's remarkable brevity reflected practical constraints and strategic considerations, rather than any significant military setbacks. Caesar shrewdly recognized that sustained, long-term operations beyond the Rhine would necessitate extensive logistical preparations and substantial troop commitments that far exceeded his immediate resources and pressing political objectives in Gaul. The psychological impact of Caesar's daring Rhine crossings extended far beyond their immediate military consequences. Germanic tribes, who had previously viewed the Rhine as an impenetrable natural barrier to Roman expansion, now unequivocally understood that Roman engineering prowess could surmount even the most formidable natural obstacles that had protected them for centuries. The unprecedented sight of Roman legions marching, even briefly, through Germanic territory shattered long-held assumptions about Roman limitations and compelled tribal leaders to fundamentally reconsider their strategic calculations regarding any future conflicts with Rome. Caesar's second expedition in 53 BC followed similar patterns of bold penetration, yet it notably demonstrated an improved Roman understanding of Germanic geography and indigenous tactics. This campaign penetrated even deeper into Germanic territory and encountered more organized, determined resistance, thereby providing Roman commanders with invaluable intelligence regarding Germanic military capabilities and complex political structures. Crucially, the expedition revealed that Germanic tribes possessed far more sophisticated coordination mechanisms than previously assumed, with multiple confederations demonstrating the impressive capacity to organize joint, coordinated defensive operations against external threats. These early military encounters established critical tactical precedents that would profoundly influence subsequent Roman campaigns in Germania. Roman commanders swiftly learned to anticipate and expect fierce, tenacious resistance, particularly in heavily forested terrain where the Germanic tribes' intimate knowledge of local conditions often negated many inherent advantages of superior Roman military organization and equipment. They acutely observed that Germanic warriors fought with exceptional and unwavering determination when staunchly defending their homeland, displaying levels of commitment and ferocity that significantly exceeded what Romans typically encountered in Gallic or Mediterranean campaigns. The expeditions also starkly revealed Germanic adaptability, as tribal leaders quickly and ingeniously developed effective countermeasures to Roman tactical innovations and their formidable engineering capabilities. The comprehensive intelligence gathered during Caesar's campaigns fundamentally shaped and refined Roman strategic thinking regarding Germania's conquest potential. Detailed military reports meticulously documented the region's formidable geographic challenges, intricate tribal political structures, and valuable economic resources, thereby providing future Roman commanders with unprecedented and invaluable knowledge about the prevailing conditions beyond the Rhine. These astute assessments identified both significant opportunities and considerable obstacles for potential conquest, notably highlighting Germania's abundant natural resources and immense strategic value, while simultaneously acknowledging the enormous and sustained military commitment that any successful occupation would inevitably require. Crucially, Caesar's crossings had also unequivocally demonstrated to Germanic leaders that Roman expansion was not merely an abstract threat, but an immediate and undeniable reality that urgently demanded concrete and strategic responses. Tribal assemblies immediately convened throughout Germania to earnestly discuss the profound implications of burgeoning Roman military capabilities, leading to the formation of new alliance structures and robust defensive preparations that would subsequently shape the region's political landscape for many decades to come. The expeditions had thus effectively ended the period of relatively limited Roman-Germanic contact, irrevocably replacing it with a dynamic of active and increasingly intense military competition that would ultimately culminate in the fateful events at Teutoburg Forest. The assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BC left his adopted heir Octavian with a vast and formidable empire that stretched geographically from the Atlantic to the Euphrates. Yet, the sprawling northern frontier remained an unfinished and strategically critical project that would come to define much of his pivotal reign as Augustus. While the Rhine had served as a convenient administrative boundary during the late Republic, Augustus astutely recognized that this river line represented a strategic compromise rather than an optimal and truly defensible position. Germanic tribes, moreover, continually launched disruptive raids across the Rhine, while the irregular and often treacherous geography of the frontier itself created numerous salient and highly vulnerable positions that perpetually strained Roman defensive resources. More critically still, alarming intelligence reports indicated that Germanic confederations were growing increasingly sophisticated in their military organization, potentially developing the formidable capacity to coordinate large-scale invasions that could gravely threaten Gaul itself. Augustus' ambitious strategic vision for Germania emerged from a comprehensive and meticulous analysis of Roman security requirements that extended far beyond mere simple border defense. The emperor and his astute advisors recognized that the Rhine frontier's fundamental weakness lay not only in its inherent accessibility to persistent Germanic raiders but also in its precarious proximity to recently pacified Gallic territories where Roman rule remained dangerously tenuous. By decisively advancing the imperial frontier to the Ella River, Roman forces would strategically gain approximately 200 miles of crucial strategic depth while simultaneously establishing undisputed control over the North German plains' extensive river systems that served as natural and historically significant invasion routes into Roman territory. This ambitious eastward expansion would also provide invaluable access to Germania's abundant natural resources, including rich iron deposits, vast timber reserves, and fertile agricultural lands that could readily support veteran colonization programs. The Ella frontier, furthermore, offered significant and distinct defensive advantages that Roman military engineers had meticulously identified through careful and exhaustive geographic analysis. Unlike the Rhine, which notoriously meandered through relatively open terrain that readily facilitated crossing operations for various groups, the Ella's course through central Germania naturally created strategic choke points where Roman forces could effectively concentrate their defensive efforts. The river's upper reaches flowed through rugged mountainous terrain predominantly controlled by tribes like the Marcomanni, who had demonstrably shown a willingness to negotiate with Rome, while its lower course approached the North Sea through extensive and treacherous marshlands that would prove exceedingly difficult for large armies to traverse. Establishing a series of fortified positions strategically along the Ella would thus create a seamlessly integrated and highly effective defensive system, capable of vigilantly monitoring and precisely controlling Germanic tribal movements across a vast and challenging geographic area. The administrative benefits of Ella frontier control, moreover, extended far beyond purely military considerations. Roman intelligence had astutely identified the river as a crucial and long-established transportation artery that efficiently connected valuable Baltic amber sources with lucrative Mediterranean markets, thereby offering significant opportunities for taxation and comprehensive trade regulation that could generate substantial and much-needed revenues for the imperial treasury. Direct control of the Ella would also provide Rome with unparalleled direct access to rich Bohemian iron deposits and extensive Germanic slave markets that had previously operated completely beyond Roman oversight and influence. These compelling economic incentives powerfully reinforced the strategic arguments for eastward expansion, thereby creating an undeniable and compelling case for the truly massive military investment that the ambitious Germanic conquest would unequivocally require. Augustus meticulously initiated his ambitious Germanic strategy by establishing a comprehensive and formidable military infrastructure along the Rhine, intended to serve as the vital foundation for all subsequent offensive operations. The emperor keenly recognized that successful campaigns launched beyond the Rhine would unequivocally require secure and robust bases of operation, reliable and resilient supply lines, and ample strategic reserves that could respond rapidly and effectively to any developing threats. This unprecedented infrastructure development represented one of the largest and most ambitious military construction projects of the entire early imperial period. It necessitated the strategic movement of entire legions to crucial frontier positions and the extensive recruitment of thousands of auxiliary troops drawn from recently pacified territories. The fortress at Mogontiacum, known today as Mainz, became the absolute cornerstone of Augustus' Rhine frontier system. Masterfully positioned at the vital confluence of the Rhine and Main rivers, this strategically critical installation commanded the paramount river crossing that provided the most direct and crucial route into central Germania, while simultaneously controlling access to the Main Valley, which penetrated deep into the heart of Germanic territory. The construction of this formidable fortress commenced in 13 BC, meticulously overseen by veteran military engineers. These were men who had honed their skills and accumulated invaluable experience during Caesar's pivotal Gallic campaigns, bringing with them a deep understanding of frontier fortification gleaned from previous projects. The installation itself was a marvel of defensive engineering, boasting colossal earthwork defenses further fortified by sturdy timber palisades. Its internal buildings were erected in strict adherence to standardized Roman military specifications, ensuring efficiency and uniformity. Crucially, The fortress also featured extensive harbor facilities, strategically designed to support the operations of the nascent river fleet, a naval arm that would prove indispensable for the upcoming campaigns into Germania. The very design of this strategic stronghold, which some scholars refer to as Quantum, masterfully encapsulated the dual nature of Emperor Augustus's strategy for the Germanic frontier. It functioned both as an impregnable defensive bastion and a critical offensive staging ground. This expansive fortress was provisioned to house 2 full legions, augmented by various auxiliary units, thereby establishing a formidable strategic reserve of approximately 15,000 highly trained troops. This substantial force was capable of rapid deployment, poised to swiftly counter any threats emerging along the vast Middle Rhine frontier. To support these operations, the installation housed extensive internal workshops dedicated to the production of weapons, armor, and crucial engineering equipment for expeditions stretching beyond the Rhine. Complementing these workshops were vast granaries, meticulously stocked with provisions sufficient to sustain major offensive campaigns for extended periods. Beyond its military function, the installation was equipped with advanced hospital facilities, ready to treat casualties incurred during the arduous Germanic campaigns, thus preserving Roman manpower. Its administrative buildings, meanwhile, served as the nerve center for sophisticated intelligence networks, diligently monitoring tribal activities throughout the surrounding region. The concurrent establishment of Colonia Claudia Era Agrippinensium, which would later evolve into the renowned city of Cologne, represented another cornerstone of Augustus's overarching frontier strategy. Strategically situated at the vital intersection of the Rhine River and several major overland trade routes, this new colony exercised crucial control over riverine traffic while simultaneously providing direct access to the Germanic territories lying beyond the river. The foundation of the colony was predicated on the settlement of Roman veterans, whose combat experience rendered them invaluable in defending the nascent frontier. Concurrently, their families formed the nuclei of thriving civilian communities, capable of bolstering military operations through consistent agricultural production and skilled craft manufacturing. Indeed, Cologne's paramount strategic location also rendered it an ideal headquarters for crucial diplomatic missions to the various Germanic tribes, offering a neutral and secure environment where Roman officials could engage with tribal representatives without risking the operational security of purely military installations. The development of the Rhine fleet proceeded in direct parallel with the construction of the fortress, underscoring Augustus's prescient recognition that absolute control of the river would be utterly essential for the successful prosecution of Germanic operations. Roman naval forces had historically concentrated their efforts on Mediterranean operations, necessitating a profound and swift adaptation to the vastly different conditions of riverine warfare, a domain that diverged substantially from open sea combat. The vessels of the Rhine fleet were meticulously designed for optimal performance in shallow water environments, featuring distinctive flat-bottomed hulls. This specialized design allowed them to effortlessly navigate the Rhine's unpredictable seasonal variations while simultaneously transporting substantial cargo loads. These versatile ships possessed the remarkable capacity to transport entire cohorts, complete with all their equipment, thereby enabling rapid troop movements that proved critical during the protracted Germanic campaigns. The scope of fleet operations transcended mere transportation, extending to encompass vital reconnaissance missions, logistical supply chains, and direct fire support, all of which significantly enhanced Roman tactical flexibility. River patrols diligently gathered crucial intelligence regarding Germanic activities along the Rhine's eastern bank, forming the empire's eyes and ears in the contested territory. Simultaneously, dedicated supply vessels maintained uninterrupted communication between scattered Roman positions, ensuring operational cohesion. The fleet's shallow draft vessels possessed the unique ability to penetrate deep into Germanic river systems, channels that were otherwise inaccessible to larger ships. This capability empowered Roman forces to launch audacious surprise attacks against tribal settlements nestled far from major waterways, catching their adversaries off guard. These burgeoning riverine capabilities would prove particularly valuable during the campaigns spearheaded by Drusus the Elder, who adeptly leveraged river operations to penetrate Germanic territory with a swiftness that overland marches could never have achieved. Drusus the Elder assumed command of the Rhine frontier operations in 12 BC, entrusted with explicit instructions from Augustus to embark upon the systematic conquest of Germania. Augustus had judiciously selected his stepson for this monumental assignment, confident in his proven military competence and unwavering political reliability. The emperor understood that the Germanic campaigns would demand commanders capable of innovatively adapting Roman tactical doctrine to the challenges of unfamiliar terrain and the unpredictable capabilities of the enemy. Drusus's appointment itself powerfully underscored the emperor's deep commitment to Germanic expansion. The assignment of a member of the imperial family to this theater unequivocally signaled that these operations represented a paramount strategic priority, far transcending the scope of routine frontier management. The initial campaigns under Drusus's command brought to light both the immense potential and the inherent challenges of conquering Germania. Roman forces achieved significant tactical successes against individual tribes, consistently demonstrating that Roman military superiority remained decisive in direct confrontations. Indeed, the Germanic tribes, including the Ubii and Tencteri, who had previously dared to conduct raids across the Rhine, suffered devastating defeats whenever they attempted to resist the Roman advance in organized, pitched battles. These early victories not only affirmed Roman assessments regarding the limitations of Germanic military organization but also provided invaluable first-hand experience in conducting sustained operations beyond the Rhine. Drusus's forces skillfully penetrated Germanic territory along multiple axes, ingeniously utilizing the region's intricate river systems as natural invasion routes deep into the interior. The Lippe River campaign of 11 BC stood as a testament to Roman engineering prowess, as military construction teams meticulously built a series of fortified camps along the river's course, effectively establishing a secure supply line that stretched more than 100 miles beyond the Rhine. These strategically placed installations enabled Roman forces to maintain permanent positions within Germanic territory, facilitating systematic pacification operations against the surrounding tribes. The resounding success of this campaign emboldened Augustus, prompting him to authorize expanded operations that would extend Roman control even deeper into Germania's interior. The Weser River expedition of 10 BC marked the deepest Roman penetration into Germanic territory achieved during Drusus's remarkable campaigns. Roman forces advanced steadfastly along the river's course until they encountered the formidable Cherusite territory, engaging in several skirmishes that unequivocally demonstrated Roman tactical superiority. However, these engagements simultaneously underscored the immense challenges inherent in maintaining extended supply lines within hostile territory. The expedition eventually reached the Weser's confluence with smaller tributaries, which offered tantalizing access to the North German plain itself, providing fleeting glimpses of the ultimate geographic objectives that Augustus had envisioned for the Germanic frontier. Yet these initial successes subtly masked fundamental challenges that would ultimately undermine the Roman conquest efforts. The Germanic tribes exhibited remarkable adaptability, swiftly developing cunning countermeasures to Roman tactical advantages. They wisely avoided direct, pitched confrontations, opting instead for pervasive harassment operations that relentlessly strained Roman logistics and eroded troop morale. The dense, unforgiving forest terrain effectively negated many of the inherent advantages of Roman military organization, often forcing legionary formations to operate in smaller, more dispersed units that became dangerously vulnerable to sudden ambush attacks. Furthermore, securing the vast and exposed supply lines demanded enormous troop commitments, which inevitably reduced the forces available for offensive operations, thus creating a profound strategic dilemma that Roman commanders struggled tirelessly to resolve. The administrative challenges of governing the conquered Germanic territories proved to be even more intricate and complex than the purely military difficulties of the initial conquest. Roman administrative systems had evolved over centuries to effectively manage sophisticated Mediterranean urban civilizations, characterized by established governmental structures, intricate commercial networks, and largely literate populations. Germania, however, presented an entirely different set of conditions, demanding fundamental adaptations to entrenched Roman governmental practices. The Germanic tribes conspicuously lacked the urban centers that typically served as convenient administrative focal points for Roman provincial government. Moreover, Their political structures placed a strong emphasis on deeply ingrained personal relationships and tribal loyalties, concepts that fundamentally conflicted with the more rigid Roman legal frameworks. Consequently, the imposition of Roman law in Germanic territories encountered widespread resistance that transcended mere cultural differences, extending to fundamental disagreements about core principles of justice, property rights, and political authority itself. Germanic legal traditions, for instance, typically emphasized collective decision-making and a system of compensation-based dispute resolution. In stark contrast, Roman law relied upon hierarchical authority structures and punishment-based enforcement mechanisms. Roman attempts to impose Mediterranean legal concepts often clashed directly with deeply held Germanic customs concerning inheritance, marriage, and criminal justice, inevitably creating deep-seated resentment that severely undermined pacification efforts. Tax collection presented particularly acute challenges, as Germanic economies operated according to principles that differed substantially from sophisticated Roman commercial practices. Most Germanic communities primarily practiced subsistence agriculture, supplemented by limited craft production, which generated very little surplus wealth capable of supporting Rome's substantial taxation demands. The pervasive absence of monetary systems in many Germanic territories compelled Roman administrators to accept payment in kind, which created significant logistical problems in transporting and efficiently storing vast quantities of agricultural products and manufactured goods. These pervasive economic difficulties rendered the Germanic territories exceedingly expensive to administer while simultaneously generating only minimal revenues for the imperial treasury. The inherent tension between military occupation and civilian settlement programs ultimately reflected broader, underlying contradictions within Augustus's comprehensive Germanic strategy. Military commanders, by their very nature, focused intensely on maintaining security through the relentless deployment of force and the assertion of tactical superiority. Civilian administrators, conversely, endeavored to establish the essential economic and social foundations that they believed would enable long-term Roman control and integration. These differing priorities frequently clashed during practical implementation, as military operations often disrupted the very agricultural and commercial activities that civilian administrators diligently sought to develop and foster. Furthermore, the sheer presence of large military forces inevitably created significant security concerns among the Germanic populations, thereby hindering the crucial development of cooperative relationships that were absolutely essential for successful provincial administration. Roman veteran settlement programs encountered particular difficulties in Germanic territories, where concepts of land ownership differed fundamentally from established Roman practices. Germanic communities typically practiced collective land use arrangements, which emphasized broad tribal territorial claims rather than the individual property rights that underpinned Roman law. Roman attempts to establish veteran colonies often directly resulted in the displacement of Germanic communities from their ancestral territories, inevitably creating deep resentment and fierce resistance that severely undermined ongoing pacification efforts. Additionally, the harsh climate and unfamiliar agricultural conditions prevalent in Germania also significantly discouraged veteran settlement, as traditional Mediterranean farming techniques proved poorly adapted to the unique Germanic environmental conditions. The political upheaval that ensued after Drusus's sudden death in 9 BC created unprecedented opportunities for ambitious Germanic nobles who possessed the intelligence and adaptability to adeptly navigate the increasingly complex relationship between the Roman occupation forces and traditional tribal authority structures. Among the Cherusci, a powerful confederation that controlled strategically vital territory along the Weser River, one prominent family had already begun shrewdly positioning itself to exploit these rapidly changing circumstances. Sigimerus, a prominent Cherusci chieftain whose influence extended across multiple tribal councils, had meticulously observed Roman military capabilities during Drusus's campaigns. He astutely recognized that any successful resistance to Roman expansion would necessitate leaders who possessed a comprehensive understanding of both deeply ingrained Germanic warrior traditions and sophisticated Roman tactical doctrine. The birth of Arminius, occurring around 18 BC, took place during this period of intensifying Roman-Germanic contact. Cherusci territory at this time served as a crucial buffer zone, situated precariously between the Roman-controlled regions along the Rhine and the as-yet unconquered tribes of the North German plain. Sigimerus had established his household near modern-day Hildesheim, a location where the Innerse River provided convenient access to both the fertile Weser Valley and the critical overland routes that connected Cherusite territory with neighboring tribal confederations. This pivotal geographic position profoundly reflected the family's strategic importance within the intricate Cherusite political structures, as Sigimerus served as one of the principal war chiefs, directly responsible for coordinating military responses to any external threats. Archaeological evidence meticulously unearthed from Cherusite settlements vividly reveals the material culture into which Arminius was born, a vibrant world that seamlessly combined traditional Germanic customs with increasing exposure to sophisticated Roman manufactured goods and coveted Mediterranean luxury items. The longhouse where Arminius spent his formative childhood years showcased the characteristic timber construction techniques that Germanic builders had perfected over many centuries. It featured massive oak posts supporting robust thatch roofs, expertly designed to withstand the region's notoriously harsh winters. Interior spaces were meticulously organized according to prevailing social hierarchies, emphasizing the paramount importance of warrior bands and their intrinsic relationship to the household head. The central hall served a dual purpose, functioning both as a communal residential space and a ceremonial center where crucial tribal business was formally conducted. The impressive array of weapons and armor displayed within Sigimerus's household reflected both the exquisite traditional Germanic craftsmanship and the rapidly changing military technology that Roman contact had introduced. Iron spearheads, for instance, bore the intricate pattern welding that proudly marked their creators as master smiths, while shield bosses featured decorative elements that clearly indicated the owner's status within the tribal hierarchy. Alongside these traditional items, Roman gladii, short swords, and pieces of larica hamata, chain mail armor, were prominently displayed. These were often spoils of war, taken during encounters with Roman forces, demonstrating Cherusite military prowess while simultaneously providing practical examples of foreign military technology for careful study and eventual adaptation. Arminius's early education rigidly adhered to patterns established for Germanic noble children, placing a strong emphasis on rigorous physical conditioning, comprehensive weapons training, and the memorization of intricate tribal genealogies and legal traditions that formed the foundational bedrock of Cherusite political authority. Young nobles learned to skillfully handle spears and shields even before they could properly mount horses, thereby developing the exceptional coordination and raw strength that Germanic warfare fiercely demanded. The training prioritized endurance and adaptability over rigid formations, as Germanic tactics fundamentally relied on individual warrior skill and fluid small unit coordination, rather than the mass formations that so distinctly characterized Roman military doctrine. The rich oral traditions that profoundly shaped Arminius's understanding of Cherusite history prominently emphasized the tribe's crucial role as steadfast defenders of Germanic independence against foreign invasion. Particular attention was paid to the successful resistance campaigns that had famously prevented Roman conquest during Caesar's earlier expeditions into Gaul. These captivating stories provided powerful models of effective leadership and ingenious tactical innovation that would profoundly influence Arminius's later strategic thinking. Simultaneously, they reinforced core cultural values that prioritized unwavering tribal loyalty and fierce resistance to external domination. The young noble diligently learned to recite complex genealogies that meticulously traced his family's authority back through generations of revered war chiefs who had sagaciously led the Cherusei through countless previous conflicts with neighboring tribes and formidable foreign invaders alike. Religious instruction formed yet another crucial component of Arminius's comprehensive education, as Germanic spiritual traditions provided the essential ideological framework that justified both political authority and military action. Cherusei religious practices revolved around sacred groves, hallowed spaces where tribal assemblies frequently convened to make momentous decisions, often accompanied by elaborate ritual ceremonies that powerfully reinforced social bonds between warriors and their esteemed leaders. The young Arminius actively participated in seasonal festivals that celebrated vital agricultural cycles and triumphant military victories, meticulously learning the traditional songs and sacred ceremonies that would later enable him to command the loyalty and respect of warriors from multiple diverse tribal backgrounds. The linguistic education that Arminius received profoundly reflected the increasing importance of Roman contact in Germanic political affairs. While maintaining absolute fluency in the various Germanic dialects that facilitated communication across tribal boundaries, Arminius also assiduously acquired basic Latin skills. These linguistic abilities would prove utterly crucial for his later interactions with high-ranking Roman officials. This remarkable linguistic competence singularly distinguished him from many other Germanic nobles who largely remained monolingual, providing him with significant advantages in delicate diplomatic negotiations and clandestine intelligence gathering. These skills would dramatically enhance his political influence within both Germanic and Roman circles, making him a uniquely potent figure. The momentous decision to send Arminius to serve with Roman forces represented a highly calculated political strategy by Segimerus, who astutely recognized that a deep understanding of Roman military capabilities would prove absolutely essential for the future survival and autonomy of the Cherusci. The practice of providing noble hostages to Roman commanders had indeed become common among Germanic tribes seeking to establish diplomatic relationships with the Roman occupation forces. However, Segimerus approached this arrangement not as a simple act of submission to Roman authority, but rather as an invaluable intelligence-gathering opportunity. The young Arminius, through this unique experience, would gain invaluable first-hand knowledge of Roman military organization, their intricate tactical doctrine, and their precise command structures, information that could prove utterly invaluable in any future conflicts. Arminius's formal integration into Roman military service commenced around 1 AD, when he joined auxiliary units actively conducting pacification operations in the contested territories situated between the Rhine and Weser rivers. Roman commanders had, by this time, developed the shrewd practice of incorporating Germanic nobles into their forces as a dual means of demonstrating imperial authority while simultaneously gathering crucial intelligence about tribal political dynamics and loyalties. These strategic arrangements provided Germanic leaders with valuable Roman military training and superior equipment, while in turn offering Roman commanders profound insights into intricate tribal customs and festering territorial disputes that could be skillfully exploited for strategic advantage. The auxiliary units in which Arminius served operated according to stringent Roman military standards, yet they judiciously maintained some traditional Germanic characteristics that made them remarkably more effective in the specialized environment of frontier warfare. These formations expertly combined Roman discipline and superior equipment with invaluable Germanic knowledge of local terrain and tribal customs, thereby creating hybrid military organizations that proved particularly valuable for reconnaissance and targeted harassment operations. Arminius quickly distinguished himself within these units through his natural leadership abilities and undeniable tactical innovation. He swiftly earned significant recognition and respect from Roman commanders, who deeply appreciated his effectiveness in managing Germanic recruits and expertly conducting operations within the familiar territory of his homeland. The Roman citizenship that Arminius acquired through his dedicated military service represented a truly significant political achievement, one that dramatically elevated his status within both Roman and Germanic social hierarchies. Roman citizenship conferred upon him legal protections and political rights that were strictly denied to the vast majority of Germanic peoples. Furthermore, it served as a clear demonstration of Roman recognition of Arminius's exceptional value as a military leader and a potential political ally. This elevated legal status empowered Arminius to interact with high-ranking Roman officials as an equal, rather than as a subordinate, thereby granting him unprecedented access to critical information and crucial decision-making processes that would prove absolutely pivotal for his later political activities. The equestrian rank Arminius attained, along with his Roman citizenship, served as a clear indicator of Rome's sophisticated evaluation of his military prowess and his unwavering political loyalty. The equestrian order itself represented the crucial second tier of Roman aristocracy, positioned just below the senatorial elite yet standing distinctly above ordinary citizens. This privileged status granted its members significant avenues for assuming military command and holding vital administrative responsibilities. This elevation was not merely a ceremonial gesture, It powerfully demonstrated that Roman commanders perceived Arminius as a long-term, permanent asset to the empire, rather than merely a transient or temporary ally. They fully expected him to tirelessly serve Roman interests throughout his entire career, simultaneously providing essential leadership for other Germanic auxiliary forces. Arminius's direct involvement in the rigorous Pannonian campaigns, which raged between 6 and 9 AD, furnished him with absolutely crucial, large-scale military operational experience. This period profoundly shaped his comprehensive understanding of both Rome's formidable strategic capabilities and its inherent limitations. These intense campaigns, waged against the resilient Illyrian tribes, offered him an unprecedented, intimate glimpse into the inner workings of Roman logistical systems and their intricate command structures under actual combat conditions. Concurrently, they vividly underscored the immense challenges Roman forces invariably confronted when operating in unfamiliar, often hostile terrain against determined and entrenched resistance. Arminius meticulously observed how Roman commanders adeptly modified and adapted their tactical approaches to suit diverse local conditions. He keenly noted both their remarkably successful innovations and their discernible tactical failures, recognizing these as potential weaknesses that future adversaries could potentially exploit. His Pannonian experience also provided Arminius with an immersive exposure to the entire impressive spectrum of Roman military technology and sophisticated engineering capabilities, which had been instrumental in enabling imperial expansion across an astonishing array of diverse geographic and cultural environments. He personally witnessed the rapid construction of meticulously fortified camps, often erected in the span of a single day, the formidable deployment of powerful siege engines capable of breaching even the most resilient tribal fortifications, and the precise operation of elaborate supply systems designed to sustain vast armies far removed from their established bases. This profound technical knowledge would later prove utterly invaluable when Arminius meticulously planned and executed operations against Roman forces, as he possessed a nuanced understanding of both the immense capabilities and the critical vulnerabilities inherent in Rome's military systems. The underlying cultural tensions that Arminius inevitably experienced throughout his Roman service mirrored the broader, systemic challenges faced by other Germanic nobles. These individuals frequently sought to tenaciously maintain their distinct tribal identities while simultaneously participating within the imposing Roman political and military structures. Roman military culture, by its very nature, rigorously emphasized discipline, strict hierarchy, and unwavering loyalty to imperial authority. These core values often stood in stark contradiction to traditional Germanic values, which instead prioritized personal honor, deep tribal allegiance, and a fierce sense of warrior independence. Arminius skillfully navigated these often conflicting demands through a careful and calculated adherence to Roman expectations, all the while discreetly maintaining private connections within powerful Germanic political networks. These clandestine links kept him consistently well informed about vital tribal affairs. The personal relationships Arminius astutely cultivated with various Roman commanders offered him invaluable insights into the intricacies of Roman strategic thinking and its complex political dynamics, knowledge that would ultimately prove absolutely crucial for his future endeavors. Roman officers, frequently underestimating their Germanic counterparts, often openly discussed intricate campaign plans and significant political developments in the presence of auxiliary commanders, erroneously assuming that Germanic allies inherently lacked the intellectual sophistication to fully grasp the profound strategic implications of such sensitive information. Arminius, ever the astute observer, carefully monitored these discussions. He maintained a facade of simple, unassuming loyalty, yet simultaneously gathered invaluable intelligence regarding Roman intentions and capabilities, knowledge he could later strategically deploy to Germanic advantage. The extensive intelligence networks that Arminius methodically established during his period of Roman service stretched far beyond mere military observation. They encompassed detailed, penetrating analysis of Roman administrative systems, their intricate economic policies, and the complex political relationships that fundamentally underpinned and sustained imperial control within conquered territories. He painstakingly studied Roman taxation methods, their precise legal procedures, and the specific settlement policies then being implemented in recently pacified Germanic regions. Through this diligent study, he skillfully identified inherent weaknesses and critical contradictions that could be expertly exploited by organized resistance movements. This comprehensive, almost encyclopedic understanding of Roman governmental systems would prove absolutely essential when Arminius later endeavored to coordinate widespread anti-Roman activities across multiple, disparate tribal confederations. The gradual, yet profound, evolution of Arminius's political thinking reflected his steadily deepening awareness of the fundamental and irreconcilable incompatibility between expansive Roman imperial objectives and the cherished notion of Germanic political independence. While meticulously maintaining his public facade of loyalty to Roman commanders, Arminius simultaneously began the clandestine process of developing sophisticated strategic concepts. These concepts were designed to empower Germanic tribes to effectively exploit Roman vulnerabilities while critically avoiding the tactical blunders and strategic missteps that had led to their devastating previous defeats. His truly unique position, simultaneously embedded within both the rigid Roman command structures and the fluid Germanic political networks, afforded him unparalleled opportunities for coordination and strategic planning, an advantage no previous Germanic leader had ever possessed. The profound personal transformation that Arminius underwent during his Roman service involved the critical development of advanced strategic thinking capabilities. These combined deeply ingrained Germanic warrior traditions with a sophisticated, nuanced understanding of Roman military and political systems. He learned to transcend the immediate tactical considerations that typically dominated traditional Germanic military planning, instead developing far-reaching, long-term strategic concepts that could effectively coordinate the activities of multiple tribal confederations against the formidable Roman occupation forces. This significant intellectual development would later prove absolutely crucial when Arminius assumed leadership of the powerful anti-Roman coalition, a coalition whose efforts would ultimately culminate in the devastating ambush in the Teutoburg Forest. The appointment of Publius Quinctilius Varus to the governorship of Germania in 7 AD represented a pivotal attempt by Emperor Augustus to transition the region from a phase of outright military conquest to one of stable civilian administration. This significant shift clearly reflected the emperor's profound confidence in Rome's perceived progress toward establishing permanent, unshakable control over the vast territories situated between the Rhine and Elbe rivers. Varus, specifically chosen for this crucial assignment, brought with him a distinguished career marked by extensive experience in provincial administration and military command. However, it is noteworthy that his prior experience had been predominantly gained in Mediterranean environments, which bore very little resemblance to the formidable and challenging conditions he would inevitably encounter in Germania. His previous successes in Syria, for example, had undeniably demonstrated his exceptional capacity for managing highly complex administrative challenges while simultaneously maintaining robust political stability, qualities that Augustus firmly believed would prove absolutely essential for consolidating Roman authority in the newly conquered Germanic territories. Varus's early career meticulously followed the traditional cursus honorum, the prescribed sequence of public offices designed to meticulously prepare Roman aristocrats for high-level administrative responsibilities. Born into a patrician family with long-established political connections, he had received a comprehensive classical education encompassing rhetoric, law, and philosophy, an intellectual foundation specifically intended to equip Roman nobles for effective public service. His family's considerable wealth, primarily derived from extensive agricultural holdings in Italy and astute commercial investments, provided the necessary financial resources to pursue political advancement through the notoriously expensive magistracies that ultimately led to prestigious provincial commands. The Quintili family had assiduously maintained their aristocratic status through carefully cultivated political alliances and strategic marriages, which firmly connected them to other prominent families within the exclusive Roman elite. The consulship that Varus held in 13 BC marked the distinguished culmination of his early political career and served as definitive proof of his acceptance within the innermost circles of Augustan administration. This prestigious magistracy involved significant ceremonial responsibilities and demanding administrative duties that required a sophisticated, deep understanding of Roman legal traditions and intricate governmental procedures. Varus's exemplary performance as consul earned him considerable recognition from Augustus himself and other senior officials, all of whom highly valued his proven competence in managing complex legislative processes and his remarkable ability to maintain political consensus among often competing aristocratic factions. The consulship also crucially provided Varus with the military imperium, the supreme command authority, that would later enable him to command formidable legionary forces in his subsequent provincial assignments. The Syrian governorship, which Varus assumed following his consulship, presented him with a unique array of administrative challenges. These experiences profoundly shaped his approach to provincial management and firmly established his reputation as an exceptionally effective colonial administrator. Syria represented one of Rome's most strategically vital eastern provinces, not only controlling the critical land routes that connected lucrative Mediterranean commerce with extensive Asian trade networks but also serving as the primary base for substantial military operations against persistent Parthian threats. The province encompassed remarkably diverse populations, each with distinct languages, religions, and deeply entrenched political traditions, thereby requiring governors who possessed the nuanced ability to balance these competing interests while consistently maintaining the stability that Roman commercial and military activities absolutely demanded. Varus's administrative approach in Syria was characterized by a strong emphasis on the systematic implementation of Roman legal and fiscal systems. This strategy was designed to generate substantial revenues for the imperial treasury while simultaneously establishing the institutional foundations for long-term, secure Roman control. He initiated comprehensive surveys of both agricultural land and urban property, which enabled significantly more efficient tax collection. Concurrently, he established standardized legal procedures that effectively replaced the diverse, often inconsistent local customs that had previously governed commercial disputes and criminal cases. These bold reforms dramatically increased provincial revenues, thereby powerfully demonstrating Varus's exceptional competence in fiscal management, a quality that Augustus regarded as absolutely essential for successful provincial administration. The sophisticated tax collection methods that Varus meticulously developed in Syria clearly reflected his profound understanding of the economic principles that fundamentally sustained Roman imperial expansion. He established regular assessment schedules that provided predictable and reliable revenue streams, while meticulously avoiding the arbitrary or excessive exactions that could often provoke widespread local resistance. The system he implemented ingeniously incorporated both direct taxes on agricultural production and indirect levies on commercial transactions, thereby creating multiple, diversified revenue sources that significantly reduced dependence on any single economic sector. Furthermore, Varus instituted more efficient collection procedures that effectively reduced opportunities for corruption, simultaneously ensuring that tax revenues reliably reached the imperial treasury rather than enriching local officials. The legal reforms that Varus rigorously instituted in Syria vividly demonstrated his unwavering commitment to establishing Roman judicial standards throughout the province, yet he did so while judiciously respecting local customs that did not directly conflict with imperial interests. He ingeniously created standardized court procedures that ensured the consistent application of Roman law in commercial and criminal cases, while still allowing local communities to maintain their traditional practices in matters pertaining to family and religion. These judicial innovations significantly reduced the legal uncertainties that had previously hindered commercial development, concurrently establishing clear Roman authority over the most crucial aspects of provincial life. The cultural policies that Varus diligently pursued in Syria mirrored Augustus's overarching emphasis on gradual Romanization, promoting the voluntary adoption of Roman customs rather than resorting to forced cultural transformation. He actively encouraged the construction of Roman-style public buildings and the establishment of educational institutions specifically designed to train local elites in Roman administrative practices. These visionary initiatives not only created promising opportunities for ambitious provincials to advance within Roman governmental structures but also powerfully demonstrated the tangible material benefits that Roman civilization could readily provide. The resounding success of these programs significantly contributed to the remarkable political stability that characterized Varus's Syrian administration. The military responsibilities that were intrinsically linked to Varus's Syrian governorship provided him with invaluable experience in commanding powerful legionary forces and adeptly managing complex frontier security operations, experience that Augustus firmly believed would prove exceptionally valuable in Germania. Syria's extensive eastern frontier demanded constant vigilance against persistent Parthian incursions and relentless nomadic raids, both of which severely threatened Roman territories and vital commercial routes. Varus consistently demonstrated exceptional competence in coordinating robust military responses to these multifarious threats, all while meticulously maintaining the delicate diplomatic relationships with client kingdoms that formed crucial components of Rome's intricate eastern strategy. His remarkable ability to skillfully balance rigorous military preparedness with shrewd diplomatic negotiation earned him significant recognition from imperial officials, who highly valued governors capable of expertly managing such complex strategic situations. The considerable personal wealth that Varus accumulated during his Syrian governorship reflected both the legitimate profits derived from successful provincial administration and the inherent opportunities for personal enrichment that Eastern commands traditionally afforded. Roman governors typically anticipated recovering the enormous expenses incurred during their political advancement through the revenues generated and the commercial opportunities presented by provincial assignments. Varus's undeniable financial success in Syria vividly demonstrated his keen understanding of the economic systems that fundamentally sustained Roman imperial expansion, while simultaneously providing him with the substantial resources necessary for maintaining the opulent lifestyle that his aristocratic status rightfully demanded. Augustus's momentous decision to appoint Varus to the Germanic governorship unequivocally reflected the emperor's considered assessment that the region had indeed progressed sufficiently toward pacification to warrant the significant transition from military to civilian administration. The successful campaigns previously conducted by Drusus the Elder and Tiberius had already firmly established Roman control over the territories situated between the Rhine and Weser rivers. Furthermore, diplomatic initiatives had diligently secured alliances with several key Germanic tribes, many of whom appeared to accept Roman authority. Augustus firmly believed that Varus's proven administrative competence would empower him to meticulously establish the institutional foundations that would irrevocably transform Germania from a mere military occupation zone into a productive and integrated Roman province. The strategic objectives that Augustus specifically established for Varus's Germanic administration rigorously emphasized the systematic implementation of Roman governmental systems. These systems were designed not only to generate substantial revenues but also to establish permanent, unshakable Roman control over the region's population and its valuable resources. The emperor explicitly expected Varus to conduct comprehensive censuses that would provide highly accurate assessments of Germanic agricultural capacity and demographic resources. This meticulous data collection would then enable the precise development of taxation systems comparable to those already operating successfully in other established Roman provinces. These ambitious administrative initiatives would serve to powerfully demonstrate Rome's unwavering commitment to permanent occupation, while simultaneously providing the crucial revenues necessary to support continued military operations in any unconquered territories. The cultural transformation that Augustus envisioned for Germania involved the gradual, subtle adoption of Roman customs and legal traditions, a process intended to forge lasting bonds between Germanic populations and Roman civilization. Varus received explicit instructions to actively encourage the construction of Roman-style settlements and the establishment of educational institutions specifically designed to train Germanic elites in Roman administrative practices. The emperor firmly believed that these cultural initiatives would strategically create Germanic leadership classes with vested interests in maintaining Roman authority, thereby effectively reducing the military forces required for provincial security while simultaneously increasing the region's overall economic productivity. The military resources that Augustus provided for Varus's Germanic administration reflected the emperor's confident belief in the region's pacification, yet simultaneously acknowledged the inherent security challenges that a civilian administration might still encounter. Varus was granted command of 3 full legions, along with substantial auxiliary forces, providing him with approximately 20,000 troops for the critical task of maintaining order throughout the vast territories under his jurisdiction. This formidable force, however, represented a significant reduction from the extensive military commitments that had been required during the initial conquest campaigns, reflecting Augustus's firm belief that organized Germanic resistance had been effectively and permanently eliminated. Varus's administrative approach in Germania meticulously followed the successful patterns he had established in Syria. It rigorously emphasized the systematic implementation of Roman legal and fiscal systems, specifically designed to establish robust institutional foundations for permanent imperial control. He initiated comprehensive surveys of Germanic agricultural resources and demographic patterns, which were crucial for enabling the subsequent development of efficient taxation systems. These detailed assessments necessitated extensive interaction with Germanic tribal leaders, who possessed invaluable, detailed knowledge of local conditions. This interaction, in turn, created valuable opportunities for cultivating the personal relationships that Varus firmly believed would greatly facilitate successful provincial administration. The taxation policies that Varus systematically implemented in Germania represented a fundamental and profound departure from the customary tribute arrangements that had previously characterized Roman relationships with Germanic tribes. Instead of passively accepting irregular payments negotiated through often tenuous diplomatic agreements, Varus established standardized tax assessments based on meticulous agricultural productivity and demographic surveys. These stringent new fiscal demands required Germanic communities to consistently generate regular surplus production specifically for Roman consumption. This requirement fundamentally altered the traditional subsistence patterns that had characterized Germanic economic life for centuries, forcing a radical shift away from their customary ways of living and providing for themselves. The legal reforms that Varus instituted in Germania rigorously imposed Roman judicial procedures on populations that had traditionally resolved disputes through their own tribal assemblies and customary law. Roman courts systematically replaced Germanic legal traditions with standardized procedures that heavily emphasized written documentation and hierarchical authority structures. These sweeping changes fundamentally undermined traditional Germanic political institutions, while simultaneously establishing undeniable Roman legal supremacy over the most crucial aspects of provincial life. Furthermore, these reforms created entirely new categories of legal obligations and penalties that Germanic populations found profoundly difficult to comprehend and accept, leading to widespread confusion and resentment. The cultural Romanization efforts that Varus zealously promoted in Germania encountered significant and determined resistance from populations that maintained strong, deeply ingrained attachments to their traditional customs and religious practices. His initiatives to establish Roman educational institutions and his active encouragement of the adoption of Roman architectural styles directly conflicted with long-held Germanic preferences for traditional building techniques and established educational methods. The governor's persistent attempts to promote Latin literacy and Roman religious observances met with very limited success among populations that increasingly viewed these foreign innovations as direct threats to their cherished cultural identity and their fundamental tribal autonomy. The personal relationship that gradually developed between Varus and Arminius starkly reflected the governor's overconfident belief in his own ability to skillfully manage complex Germanic political dynamics through the strategic cultivation of individual tribal leaders. Varus, recognizing Arminius's exceptional intelligence and impressive military competence, mistakenly viewed him as an ideal intermediary who could effectively facilitate communication between Roman administrators and the wider Germanic populations. The governor's profound trust in Arminius extended to a dangerous reliance on his advice regarding intricate tribal politics and potential military threats. This dependency, tragically, would prove fatally misplaced when organized Germanic resistance covertly began to coalesce and take shape, ultimately leading to disaster. The administrative challenges that Varus inevitably encountered in Germania starkly revealed the fundamental and irreconcilable differences between Mediterranean and Northern European conditions. Presented challenges that his previous experience had simply not prepared him to effectively address. Unlike the more developed eastern provinces, Germanic tribal structures lacked the urban centers and established governmental institutions that had greatly facilitated Roman administration in regions like Syria. The absence of sophisticated monetary systems and extensive commercial networks significantly complicated efforts to collect taxes. Furthermore, The widely dispersed settlement patterns made administrative communication exceedingly difficult. These multifaceted practical obstacles not only hampered the full implementation of Roman governmental systems, but also cultivated deep frustrations that fueled a growing and dangerous Germanic resentment. The intelligence failures that plagued Varus's administration were a direct consequence of his overconfidence in established Roman security arrangements, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the complex Germanic political dynamics. The governor placed undue reliance on information supplied by Germanic allies, such as Arminius, operating under the mistaken assumption that their prior Roman military service inherently guaranteed their unwavering loyalty to imperial interests. This critical dependence on potentially compromised sources critically impeded Varus from developing independent intelligence networks that could have accurately detected the burgeoning resistance movement stealthily organizing across his province. The administration's overwhelming focus on civilian concerns also inadvertently diverted crucial attention away from vital military security measures that might otherwise have revealed the rapidly developing threat. Moreover, the economic policies Varus vigorously implemented throughout Germania ignited widespread resentment among populations unaccustomed to systematic Roman taxation. Germanic communities found themselves struggling immensely to meet the regular tribute demands imposed by Roman administration, forcing them to drastically alter traditional agricultural practices and reduce consumption levels that had sustained their societies for generations. The obligation to provide taxes in Roman currency compelled Germanic tribes to engage in commercial relationships they found culturally objectionable, simultaneously creating new dependencies on Roman merchants and administrators that systematically eroded their traditional political autonomy. This systematic dismantling of Germanic autonomy under Varus's administration inadvertently created the precise conditions Arminius had been patiently waiting for since his return from the Pannonian campaigns. The Roman governor's heavy-handed implementation of taxation policies and legal reforms offered compelling and undeniable evidence to skeptical tribal leaders that Roman promises of partnership were, in reality, merely deceptive preludes to complete subjugation. Germanic communities, which had initially viewed Roman occupation as a temporary military presence, now confronted the stark reality of permanent administrative control that threatened to utterly eliminate their traditional political structures and cherished cultural practices. This profound transformation of Roman policy, shifting from an initial military conquest to a more pervasive civilian administration, paradoxically created fertile ground for organized resistance. Arminius astutely recognized these new opportunities, understanding they could be exploited through meticulous coordination and strategic planning. The initial contacts between Arminius and his prospective allies demanded extraordinary discretion, as any premature revelation of their resistance activities would have inevitably resulted in swift and brutal Roman retaliation against the conspirators and their respective tribal communities. Arminius skillfully leveraged his privileged position within the Roman command structures to identify key Germanic leaders who possessed both the necessary military capabilities and the political influence crucial for effective, coordinated resistance operations. His Roman citizenship and equestrian rank afforded him invaluable access to administrative meetings where tribal affairs were regularly discussed, enabling him to discreetly gather vital intelligence regarding Roman assessments of individual chiefs and their perceived loyalty to imperial authority. These insights proved instrumental, allowing Arminius to approach potential allies with detailed knowledge of their specific political situations and the precise grievances that might motivate them to join the resistance. The Cheruscan chieftain Borix emerged as one of Arminius's earliest and most crucial allies, contributing extensive knowledge of the Rhine frontier's defensive arrangements, and established networks of communication with tribes throughout the lower river valley to the burgeoning conspiracy. Borix had shrewdly maintained his position within Roman administrative structures while secretly nurturing connections to anti-Roman elements among his own people and neighboring confederations. The strategic location of his territory along major river routes enabled him to discreetly facilitate clandestine meetings between tribal representatives, all while maintaining the convincing appearance of routine diplomatic activities. The Cheruscan leader's well-deserved reputation for military competence and political cunning made him an ideal coordinator for resistance activities among the Western Germanic tribes, which controlled vital access routes between Roman frontier positions and the interior territories where major military operations were destined to unfold. The recruitment of Inguiomes, Arminius's own uncle and a prominent Cheruscan war chief, marked a crucial breakthrough in establishing the conspiracy's credibility among Germanic nobles who remained deeply skeptical about the feasibility of successful resistance against overwhelming Roman military power. Inguiomes possessed extensive combat experience gleaned from previous conflicts with neighboring tribes and had personally observed Roman military capabilities during the conquest campaigns of Drusus and Tiberius. His initial reluctance to support organized resistance stemmed from practical concerns about severe Roman retaliation, rather than any ideological commitment to imperial authority. Arminius gradually overcame these objections by compellingly demonstrating that Roman administrative policies would inevitably dismantle traditional Cheruscan political structures, regardless of their cooperation with the occupation forces. The careful cultivation of Inguiomes required months of private discussions, during which Arminius shared crucial intelligence about Roman strategic planning and administrative objectives that starkly revealed the futility of any accommodation strategies. The older war chief learned that Roman officials viewed Germanic tribal structures as mere temporary conveniences that would be systematically eliminated once civilian administration had been fully established. Tax collection procedures already being implemented in pacified territories unequivocally demonstrated that Roman authorities intended to extract tribute levels that would necessitate fundamental and irreversible changes in Germanic agricultural practices and social organization. Legal reforms, already in the planning stages, would ultimately eliminate tribal assemblies and customary law in favor of Roman judicial procedures that recognized only imperial authority. The expansion of the conspiracy to include leaders from the Marsian Confederation required overcoming deep-seated traditional rivalries that had historically prevented effective cooperation between these tribes and the Cherusci. The Marsian chieftain Malavendus had astutely maintained his people's independence through careful neutrality in intertribal conflicts, simultaneously developing military capabilities that rendered his territory too formidable and costly for neighboring tribes to attack. His recruitment necessitated extensive negotiations that meticulously addressed existing territorial disputes and established precise protocols for coordinated military operations, ensuring that individual tribal autonomy would not be compromised. Arminius skillfully succeeded in these discussions by emphasizing that Roman administrative policies posed an existential threat to all Germanic tribes equally, irrespective of their previous relationships with each other. The inclusion of Chatti representatives in the conspiracy presented particular challenges due to their geographic separation from the primary operational areas along the Weser River and their established reputation for disciplined military organization, which might potentially conflict with the more flexible tactical approaches Arminius envisioned. The Chatti war chief, Adindestrius, brought valuable military expertise and access to the Confederation's extensive weapons manufacturing capabilities. However, his participation required firm assurances that resistance operations would not devolve into undisciplined raids that could be easily suppressed by superior Roman forces. These intricate negotiations successfully established command structures that carefully balanced tribal autonomy with the imperative for operational coordination, all while ensuring that each confederation retained full control over its own military forces. The intelligence-gathering capabilities Arminius possessed through his Roman military service provided unprecedented insights into imperial strategic planning and tactical procedures. This invaluable knowledge enabled the conspiracy to develop precise countermeasures for anticipated Roman responses to resistance activities. His privileged access to administrative correspondence revealed the exact locations and strength of Roman garrison forces deployed throughout Germania. Furthermore, his participation in Roman military planning sessions furnished him with detailed knowledge of supply routes, communication systems, and reinforcement procedures that Roman commanders would undoubtedly employ during crisis situations. This intelligence proved absolutely crucial for developing operational plans that could cleverly exploit Roman vulnerabilities while simultaneously avoiding the tactical mistakes that had led to previous Germanic defeats. Arminius's systematic analysis of Roman military capabilities revealed specific weaknesses in the imperial defensive arrangements that could be skillfully exploited through coordinated attacks across multiple tribal territories. Roman forces in Germania were largely distributed among numerous small garrisons, designed to provide local security but crucially lacking the concentration necessary for major military operations. The communication systems connecting these scattered positions relied heavily on vulnerable road networks and river routes, which could be easily disrupted through coordinated harassment operations. Furthermore, the extensive supply lines that sustained Roman forces stretched back to Rhine frontier bases, often passing through territories controlled by potentially hostile Germanic tribes. This presented prime opportunities for interdiction efforts that could effectively isolate Roman garrisons from their vital logistical support. The seasonal timing of resistance operations demanded meticulous coordination, taking into account both Roman military activities and Germanic agricultural cycles, which directly influenced the availability of tribal warriors for extended campaigns. Roman forces typically conducted major operations during the summer months when favorable weather conditions greatly facilitated troop movement and supply operations. Conversely, Germanic agricultural demands concentrated tribal attention on farming activities during crucial planting and harvesting periods. Arminius shrewdly identified the late summer period as optimal for resistance operations, precisely when Roman forces would be dispersed for routine administrative activities, and Germanic communities would have completed their harvest, thereby enabling a significant number of warriors to participate in extended military campaigns. The deception tactics Arminius employed to maintain Roman confidence while simultaneously preparing for coordinated attacks required a sophisticated understanding of imperial administrative procedures and the personal characteristics of individual Roman officials. He meticulously continued to provide seemingly valuable intelligence about tribal affairs, yet carefully controlled the information that reached Roman commanders. This ensured that his reports consistently confirmed their existing expectations about Germanic pacification without ever revealing the developing resistance movement. His active participation in Roman military exercises and administrative meetings skillfully demonstrated continued loyalty, while simultaneously providing invaluable opportunities to assess Roman tactical capabilities and identify potential weaknesses in their security arrangements. The establishment of secure communication networks among conspirators demanded innovative approaches that could evade detection by vigilant Roman intelligence services, while still enabling coordination across the vast geographic areas the resistance operations would encompass. Traditional Germanic communication methods relied on mounted messengers traveling established routes between tribal territories. However, these systems were inherently vulnerable to Roman interception and could easily expose the true scope of resistance planning. Arminius ingeniously developed alternative communication procedures that utilized commercial travelers and religious gatherings, cleverly disguising political messages as routine intertribal correspondence. These innovative methods enabled the conspiracy to maintain vital coordination while effectively avoiding the suspicious patterns of activity that might otherwise alert Roman administrators to the developing threats. The weapons procurement and distribution efforts supporting resistance preparations required careful attention to Roman monitoring of Germanic military capabilities and the potential for administrative interference in tribal armament activities. Roman officials had implemented deliberate policies designed to control Germanic access to iron weapons and military equipment, simultaneously maintaining surveillance of tribal smiths and weapon caches that could potentially support organized resistance. The conspiracy effectively addressed these constraints through distributed manufacturing efforts, utilizing existing craft networks while strategically avoiding the concentration of weapons that might attract unwelcome Roman attention. Individual tribal smiths discreetly increased their production of agricultural tools that could serve military purposes, while hunting equipment was stockpiled in quantities that significantly exceeded normal subsistence requirements. The training and preparation activities that enhanced Germanic military capabilities necessitated a careful coordination between traditional tribal military traditions and the tactical innovations that would be absolutely essential for successful operations against Roman forces. Traditional Germanic warfare typically emphasized individual warrior skills and small unit tactics, which were poorly suited for the large-scale, coordinated operations that effective resistance would demand. Arminius skillfully utilized his Roman military experience to develop training programs that preserved Germanic tactical flexibility while incorporating organizational principles that could enable larger formations to operate effectively against disciplined Roman military units. These crucial preparations involved joint training exercises, cunningly disguised as traditional seasonal gatherings, where warriors from different tribes could practice coordinated maneuvers without arousing any Roman suspicion. The psychological preparation of Germanic populations for sustained resistance required careful attention to tribal morale and the unique cultural factors that motivated warrior participation in dangerous military activities. Germanic military traditions historically emphasized personal honor and unwavering loyalty to individual war chiefs, rather than abstract political objectives. This presented significant challenges for resistance movements that demanded sustained commitment to long-term strategic goals. Arminius effectively addressed these cultural factors by emphasizing the profound religious and cultural threats that Roman administration posed to traditional Germanic life, while simultaneously highlighting the specific military vulnerabilities that made successful resistance a genuine possibility. Religious ceremonies and traditional festivals provided powerful opportunities to reinforce these messages and to build the crucial social cohesion that sustained military effectiveness. The coordination of resistance timing across multiple tribal territories demanded unprecedented levels of intertribal communication and political cooperation, which inherently challenged traditional Germanic political structures. Each tribal confederation maintained its own distinct seasonal calendar and military traditions, which naturally influenced the timing of warrior availability and operational capabilities. The conspiracy urgently needed to synchronize these diverse schedules while rigorously maintaining the security requirements that prevented any premature revelation of their resistance plans. Arminius brilliantly achieved this complex coordination through the establishment of standardized signals and predetermined timing sequences, which enabled simultaneous operations across vast geographic areas without requiring direct communication between tribal forces during critical operational periods. The final preparations for coordinated resistance operations involved the careful positioning of tribal forces and the meticulous accumulation of supplies that would sustain extended military campaigns against anticipated Roman retaliation efforts. Germanic communities discreetly relocated warriors and essential equipment to strategic positions that provided direct access to planned operational areas, all while maintaining the appearance of routine seasonal activities. Food supplies were systematically accumulated in hidden caches, strategically placed to support military operations without depleting the vital agricultural resources that tribal communities needed for their survival. These extensive logistical preparations required months of careful planning and precise execution, vividly demonstrating the sophisticated organizational capabilities that the conspiracy had painstakingly developed under Arminius's astute leadership. The late summer of 980 found Varus's 3 legions dispersed across their seasonal encampments in the territories between the Weser and Ems rivers, following the standard Roman practice of establishing summer quarters that could comfortably accommodate large military formations while also facilitating administrative activities throughout the occupied territories. The legions 16, 10, and 14, along with 6 cohorts of auxiliary troops and 3 squadrons of cavalry, represented approximately 20,000 Roman soldiers whose formidable presence had maintained imperial authority throughout Germania for the previous 2 years. These forces had grown accustomed to the established rhythms of provincial garrison duty, conducting routine patrols and administrative functions that seemed to unequivocally confirm the success of Roman pacification efforts in the region. Varus had established his primary headquarters near modern-day Minden, a strategic location where the Weser River's course provided natural transportation routes while simultaneously offering significant defensive advantages for a major military installation. This location commanded the crucial river crossing that connected Roman positions along the Rhine with the forward bases that extended imperial control toward the Elbe frontier. The headquarters complex itself housed the elaborate administrative apparatus that governed the vast Germanic territories under Roman authority, including the financial offices responsible for collecting tribute, the judicial courts that administered Roman law, and the intelligence services meticulously monitoring tribal activities throughout the province. The legionary camps that housed Varus's forces reflected the standardized construction techniques that Roman military engineers had perfected through centuries of extensive frontier warfare. Each installation featured robust rectangular earthwork defenses reinforced with formidable timber palisades, internal buildings meticulously arranged according to established military specifications, and comprehensive defensive systems expertly designed to withstand siege operations by conventional enemies. The camp's layouts incorporated comfortable barracks for enlisted personnel, designated quarters for officers and administrative staff, well-equipped workshops for equipment maintenance, secure granaries for food storage, and fully functional hospitals for treating wounded soldiers. These impressive installations represented substantial and enduring investments in permanent infrastructure that clearly demonstrated Roman commitment to maintaining long-term control over the Germanic territories. The composition of Varus's military. The forces deployed reflected the hybrid nature of Roman frontier armies, which typically combined veteran legionary units with auxiliary troops recruited from recently conquered populations. These three legions formed the essential tactical backbone of Roman military might. Their soldiers were uniformly equipped with standardized weapons and armor, and rigorously trained in the disciplined formations that had proven so effective in enabling Roman conquest across the entire Mediterranean world. Each legion comprised approximately 5,000 infantry soldiers, meticulously organized into cohorts of 480 men. Beyond this, they included a vital array of specialists such as engineers, medical personnel, and administrative staff, all dedicated to maintaining the complex logistical systems essential for sustaining military operations far from established supply bases. Attached to Varus's command were auxiliary forces, notably including Germanic warriors. These men had been recruited from various tribes that had submitted to Roman authority during the conquest campaigns of the preceding decade. These specialized units brought unique capabilities that perfectly complemented the strengths of the legions. Their contributions included cavalry formations, crucial for reconnaissance and swift pursuit operations, light infantry, exceptionally skilled in forest warfare, and local specialists intimately familiar with the indigenous terrain and tribal customs. These Germanic auxiliaries served under Roman officers, yet were permitted to retain some of their traditional equipment and tactical methods. This unique arrangement forged military units that skillfully blended Roman discipline with invaluable indigenous knowledge of local conditions. However, intelligence reports reaching Varus in late August began to indicate a growing unrest among several tribal confederations that had previously accepted Roman authority without significant resistance. Indeed, chatty war bands had begun conducting brazen raids against Roman supply convoys traveling between the Rhine bases and forward positions. Concurrently, Brutality communities had deliberately failed to provide the tribute payments that Roman tax collectors expected according to established schedules. Initially, these incidents appeared to be isolated expressions of discontent rather than coordinated resistance activities. Nevertheless, they necessitated immediate military responses to unequivocally demonstrate continued Roman authority and deter any further challenges to imperial control. It was at this critical juncture that Arminius approached Varus with detailed reports about a significant uprising among the Anglovarii, a formidable tribal confederation controlling territory north of the Weser River, particularly near its confluence with smaller tributaries providing access to the North Sea coastal regions. According to Arminius's intelligence, Anglovarii war chiefs had not only rejected Roman administrative demands but were also mobilizing substantial military forces. These forces threatened to disrupt the intricate tribal alliances that underpinned Roman authority throughout the region. The uprising, it was alleged, also involved coordination with other tribal groups. This implied a dangerous potential to escalate localized resistance into a broader challenge to Roman control, one that would demand immediate military intervention to prevent its spread to already pacified territories. The urgent tactical situation described by Arminius clearly demanded a swift Roman response to prevent the Anglovarii from establishing robust defensive positions. Such fortifications would significantly complicate future military operations and, more critically, could inspire additional tribal uprisings across Germania. The tribal forces had reportedly already occupied strategic positions along key river crossings, effectively controlling access to their territory. Furthermore, They were actively establishing communication with neighboring confederations, who might provide military support if Roman forces delayed their response. Arminius emphatically stressed that immediate action would be crucial to isolate the uprising before it could gain irreversible momentum. Conversely, any prolonged Roman hesitation would only enable the rebels to consolidate their positions and attract even more tribal allies. The route Arminius recommended for Roman military operations meticulously followed established paths. These routes connected Varus's headquarters directly with the Anglovarii territories, while strategically avoiding the major river crossings that tribal forces might have already fortified against a Roman approach. The proposed march was designed to proceed northwest from the Weser Valley, traversing densely forested terrain. This provided excellent concealment from enemy observation, crucially allowing Roman forces to approach the center of the uprising from an entirely unexpected direction. Arminius possessed exceptionally detailed knowledge of these specific routes, garnered from his previous service with Roman reconnaissance units. Moreover, his extensive family connections among the Cherusci provided reliable, up-to-the-minute intelligence regarding trail conditions and vital water sources, both critical for sustaining military operations. Varus readily accepted Arminius's recommendations, primarily due to his established trust in the Germanic leaders' proven military competence and political reliability. The Roman governor had indeed grown increasingly dependent on Arminius's sagacious advice regarding tribal affairs, viewing him as an invaluable intermediary. Arminius possessed a unique understanding of both Roman military requirements and the intricate dynamics of Germanic political structures. Previous operations conducted under Arminius's expert guidance had consistently achieved their objectives without significant Roman casualties, thereby reinforcing Varus's unwavering confidence in his allies' strategic assessments and tactical recommendations. The governor's decision to undertake immediate military action was a clear reflection of his unwavering determination to uphold Roman authority and simultaneously demonstrate imperial power to potentially rebellious tribal populations. The Roman force that departed the Weser Valley headquarters on September 9 comprised elements from all three legions, augmented by substantial auxiliary contingents and the crucial cavalry units. These cavalry units were tasked with providing essential reconnaissance and communication capabilities throughout the campaign. Varus personally commanded approximately 15,000 troops. Their equipment and supplies were transported by a massive baggage train, which itself included nearly 10,000 camp followers, servants, and civilian administrators, all of whom routinely accompanied Roman armies during major operations. The column's immense length stretched for several miles along the narrow forest paths, creating a massive, slow-moving military procession through terrain that inherently limited visibility and severely restricted tactical maneuverability. The march formation adopted by Varus adhered to standard Roman procedures for movement through potentially hostile territory. Advance guards preceded the main column, while flanking detachments provided crucial security against surprise attacks launched from concealed positions. The legionary units marched in their established organizational structures, meticulously maintaining the disciplined formations that allowed for rapid deployment into combat operations whenever tactical situations demanded an immediate response to enemy contact. The vital baggage train occupied the column's center, afforded protection by military escorts, yet strategically remained accessible for the essential logistical support that sustained army operations during extended campaigns. The challenging terrain through which the Roman column advanced immediately presented formidable obstacles, severely testing the adaptability of military units predominantly trained for operations in the more open Mediterranean environments. Dense forests, composed primarily of oak, beech, and pine, formed thick overhead canopies. These not only blocked out much of the sunlight but also dramatically limited visibility to mere dozens of meters, rather than the hundreds they were accustomed to. The forest floor itself consisted of thick accumulations of fallen leaves, rotting vegetation, and tangled undergrowth. This muffled sounds, effectively concealing both natural obstacles and potential ambush positions from Roman eyes and ears. Adding to the difficulties, seasonal rains had created pervasive muddy conditions. These drastically slowed movement and made footing treacherous for heavily loaded soldiers and pack animals alike. The specific paths that Arminius had selected for the Roman advance were, in fact, ancient routes that Germanic tribes had utilized for centuries to move between their seasonal settlements and vital trading centers. These winding tracks meandered through the dense forest, meticulously following topographic features and natural obstacles, thereby avoiding the steep ravines and marshy areas that characterized much of the regional landscape. However, the route's narrow widths forced the Roman column to stretch out over enormous distances. This effectively prevented the concentration of forces that Roman tactical manuals explicitly recommended for operations in hostile territory. The path's winding courses also severely limited communication between different sections of the sprawling column, thereby creating significant coordination challenges that would prove absolutely crucial once combat operations inevitably began. The first day's march proceeded without significant incident, as Roman forces covered approximately 12 miles through increasingly dense forest terrain. This gradually funneled their movement into narrow corridors, constrained by what appeared to be formidable, almost impassable, obstacles. Arminius consistently maintained his position near Varus's command group, offering invaluable guidance regarding route selection while providing reassuring assessments about the security situation in the surrounding territories. Germanic auxiliary units diligently conducted reconnaissance operations, confirming the absence of immediate threats. Simultaneously, they gathered vital intelligence about trail conditions and water sources, information that would critically influence subsequent movement decisions. The Roman camp established that evening followed standard defensive procedures, complete with hastily constructed earthwork fortifications and vigilant guard rotations. These measures provided a sense of security against potential night attacks. However, the morning of September 10th brought with it rapidly deteriorating weather conditions that would profoundly impact all subsequent military operations. Heavy rains commenced before dawn, quickly transforming the ground into thick mud. This significantly slowed movement and drastically reduced visibility throughout the forested terrain. The relentless precipitation soaked through clothing and equipment, adding considerable weight to the soldiers' already heavy loads and creating pervasive discomfort that severely affected both morale and physical performance. The rain also had the insidious effect of muffling sounds that might otherwise have provided a crucial warning of approaching enemies. Simultaneously, its own drumming noise masked the movements of hostile forces concealed in the surrounding forest areas. The challenging terrain features that characterized the second day's march route gradually funneled the Roman column into increasingly restricted corridors. These severely limited tactical options while inadvertently creating ideal conditions for deadly ambush operations. The path led through a perilous series of narrow defile, nestled between wooded hills and treacherous marshy lands. This forced the Roman formation to stretch out over such vast distances that it completely prevented mutual support between different units. These severe geographic constraints utterly eliminated the possibility of deploying into the standard battle formations that Roman tactical doctrine prescribed for effective combat operations. Instead, they created unparalleled opportunities for enemies to attack isolated portions of the column without having to face coordinated Roman resistance. The first Germanic attacks began during the early afternoon of September 10th. Small groups of agile warriors suddenly emerged from concealed positions, unleashing devastating spear volleys against the flanks of the Roman column before swiftly disappearing back into the impenetrable forest depths. These initial assaults specifically targeted vulnerable points along the extended Roman formation, focusing particularly on baggage train elements and auxiliary units, which naturally possessed less defensive capability than the veteran legionary formations. The attacks achieved complete tactical surprise through the meticulous coordination of timing and positioning. Striking multiple points simultaneously, they effectively created widespread confusion and prevented any effective Roman response to individual assault groups. The Germanic tactical methods employed during these opening attacks clearly demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of Roman military capabilities and, crucially, how the terrain features could negate imperial tactical advantages. The warriors shrewdly avoided direct confrontation with formed legionary units. Instead, they concentrated on relentless harassment operations, which effectively disrupted Roman movement while inflicting steady casualties on exposed personnel. Spear volleys were delivered with precision from concealed positions at ranges that maximized Germanic advantages in missile warfare, while simultaneously minimizing their own exposure to potentially devastating Roman counterattacks. The attackers expertly utilized their superior knowledge of the local forest paths to approach Roman positions undetected, strike rapidly, and then withdraw with equal speed before Roman forces could possibly organize effective pursuit operations. The psychological impact of these initial attacks proved as significant as their tactical effects. Roman soldiers found themselves facing an unseen enemy that could strike without warning from any direction, yet remained largely invisible within the surrounding forest. The traditional Roman responses to hostile contact proved entirely ineffective in terrain that fundamentally prevented the deployment of their standard battle formations. Furthermore, the enemy's deliberate refusal to engage in direct combat eliminated any opportunities for the decisive victories that Roman tactical doctrine so heavily emphasized. The constant, unnerving threat of additional attacks created immense stress and anxiety among Roman personnel. They had grown accustomed to the security of established camps and the predictable behavior of their more conventional enemies. Varus's strenuous attempts to maintain march discipline and tactical cohesion faced ever-increasing challenges as Germanic attacks intensified relentlessly throughout the afternoon and evening of September 10. The Roman commander ordered his forces to adopt modified defensive formations, hoping they could provide better protection against the incessant missile attacks while still attempting to maintain forward movement toward their intended destination. These crucial tactical adjustments demanded constant and reliable communication between different units along the extended column, creating additional coordination challenges in terrain that severely limited visibility and hindered reliable signal transmission. Furthermore, the modified formations inevitably reduced the Roman advance's speed, thereby extending the time that forces remained exposed to continued Germanic harassment. The night encampment that Roman forces established on September 10 vividly reflected the rapidly deteriorating tactical situation that Varus's army now faced, as Germanic attacks persisted relentlessly throughout the hours of darkness. Standard Roman defensive procedures proved utterly inadequate for the dense forest environment, where traditional earthwork fortifications simply could not provide comprehensive protection against enemies who possessed an intimate and expert knowledge of the surrounding terrain features. Germanic warriors conducted relentless probing attacks against Roman perimeter positions throughout the night, effectively preventing any rest for the weary troops while maintaining an intense psychological pressure that severely affected morale and physical readiness for subsequent operations. The morning of September 11 chillingly revealed the full extent of Germanic coordination, as attacks resumed with significantly increased intensity and a much broader geographic scope. Multiple tribal contingents had meticulously positioned themselves along the entire Roman route of advance, effectively creating a deadly gauntlet of ambush positions. This arrangement would subject Varus's forces to a continuous, grinding assault throughout their desperate attempted movement. The Germanic forces had also established sophisticated communication systems, enabling perfectly coordinated timing of their attacks. Crucially, this system also maintained the tactical flexibility that allowed individual war bands to expertly exploit specific opportunities as they developed during combat operations. The Roman column's movement on September 11 rapidly devolved into a desperate fighting retreat, as Germanic pressure intensified relentlessly while the treacherous terrain features continued to restrict the already limited tactical options available to the imperial forces. Legionary units valiantly attempted to maintain their traditional formations, even as they advanced through increasingly narrow passages that fundamentally prevented the effective deployment of their superior discipline and equipment. The baggage train became a particular point of extreme vulnerability. Pack animals and civilian personnel struggled agonizingly through the deep, muddy conditions, all while under the constant, terrifying threat of Germanic attack. The critical protection of noncombatants and essential supplies demanded substantial troop commitments, which inevitably reduced the forces available for any meaningful offensive operations against the well-positioned Germanic adversaries. The collapse of Roman tactical cohesion accelerated dramatically throughout September 11. Continued Germanic attacks, coupled with the relentlessly deteriorating weather conditions and the unforgiving challenging terrain, combined to utterly overwhelm imperial military capabilities. Individual units became increasingly separated from the main column as commanders were forced to make desperate tactical decisions based solely on immediate local conditions, rather than any coordinated strategic planning. Communication between different elements of Varus's army completely broke down. Traditional signal systems proved entirely inadequate for the complexities of forest warfare conditions, while Germanic attacks ruthlessly disrupted the messenger services that normally maintained command coordination during complex military operations. The final, devastating phase of the battle began during the early morning hours of September 12. Germanic forces launched a series of perfectly coordinated assaults against multiple points along the disintegrating Roman column. These attacks represented the chilling culmination of 3 grueling days of careful positioning and meticulous tactical preparation. Tribal warriors had gradually, yet inexorably, surrounded the Roman forces, while maintaining continuous, crushing pressure that prevented any effective reorganization or strategic withdrawal. The Germanic assault expertly combined traditional tribal warfare methods with brilliant tactical innovations. These innovations were specifically designed to exploit the particular Roman vulnerabilities that had been so clearly revealed during the previous days of combat operations. The coordinated Germanic assault that commenced at dawn on September 12 truly represented the culmination of Arminius's strategic planning genius, and, simultaneously, the complete collapse of Roman tactical advantages that had sustained imperial military dominance throughout the Mediterranean world. The tribal forces that emerged from their concealed positions along multiple points of the Roman column had spent 3 days meticulously maneuvering into optimal attack positions, all while maintaining a continuous, suffocating pressure that effectively prevented any meaningful Roman reorganization. The Germanic warriors who now launched their final, decisive offensive numbered approximately 18,000 fighters, drawn from the formidable Cherusei, Marsy, Chatti, Bructeri, and Sicambri confederations. This represented the largest coordinated Germanic military operation ever attempted against Roman forces since the Cimbrian invasions of the late 2nd century BC. The tactical execution of the Germanic assault demonstrated an exceptionally sophisticated understanding of Roman military vulnerabilities and, critically, how the unique terrain features could completely negate imperial advantages in superior equipment and rigorous training. Arminius had brilliantly positioned his forces to exploit the narrow defile and treacherous marshy ground. These natural obstacles not only channeled Roman movement, but also critically prevented the deployment of their standard legionary formations. The attack commenced simultaneously along a front extending nearly 2 miles, thereby ensuring that no portion of the Roman column could possibly provide mutual support to units under direct assault. Germanic war bands struck with devastating precision from elevated positions, which offered significant tactical advantages. Crucially, these positions also provided concealed withdrawal routes, allowing them to disengage effectively if Roman resistance proved more robust than anticipated. The Cherusei contingent, under Arminius's direct command, specifically targeted the Roman command group. Here, Varus traveled with his staff officers and, more symbolically, the legionary standards that powerfully represented imperial authority and military honor. These focused attacks aimed not only at eliminating Roman leadership but also at capturing these potent symbolic objects, which Germanic warriors recognized as fundamental sources of their enemy's power. The strategic assault on the Roman command section was spearheaded by approximately 3,000 Cherusei warriors. These highly trained fighters employed sophisticated, coordinated infantry tactics, ingeniously blending traditional Germanic combat methods with innovative strategies gleaned from Arminius's own extensive Roman military experience. Their primary attack formation was the formidable wedge-shaped cuneus, designed to concentrate seasoned warriors at the spearhead of the attack, while younger, robust fighters behind the veteran spearmen provided crucial mass and sustained momentum. The Roman reaction to this meticulously coordinated offensive starkly exposed the profound degradation of their imperial military capabilities and unit cohesion, a direct consequence of 3 relentless days of continuous harassment. Legionary formations, which had previously demonstrated remarkable resilience and maintained their organizational structure even against earlier Germanic incursions, now found themselves catastrophically unable to deploy effectively. The treacherous terrain, characterized by dense forests and difficult ground, utterly precluded the establishment of stable defensive lines or the execution of synchronized tactical maneuvers. Despite desperate attempts by individual cohorts to form defensive squares, aiming to offer all-around protection against the fierce Germanic onslaught, the muddy ground and thick vegetation severely impeded the rapid movement and precise positioning essential for these formations to be effective against a highly mobile enemy. The 17th Legion, positioned near the vanguard of the Roman column, absorbed the initial, brutal impact of the Germanic assault. Various Germanic tribes, including elements referred to as marshy and brucker warriors, clashed with their advance guard, while the main body of the legion simultaneously came under fire from Cherusci forces launching surprise attacks from concealed positions along the column's flanks. Impressively, the legion's first cohort, comprising battle-hardened veteran soldiers with vast combat experience, managed to swiftly establish a defensive perimeter around their revered eagle standard. However, their efforts to maintain vital communication with other units through the traditional horn signals proved increasingly futile and unreliable amidst the disorienting, echoing depths of the dense forest. In a bid to counter the escalating chaos, the cohort centurions bravely directed their men to adopt the Teutoburg formation, a defensive posture specifically designed to offer protection against missile attacks. However, the unforgiving, close-quarters nature of the terrain rendered this tactical method largely ineffective. As Germanic warriors, wielding their formidable spears and single-edged swords, pressed relentlessly forward into brutal hand-to-hand combat, the organizational structure of the 16th Legion began an agonizing, gradual collapse. Individual sentries found themselves increasingly isolated from their parent cohorts, and the relentless Germanic attacks utterly thwarted any attempts to restore much-needed tactical coordination, sealing their fate. The legion's sacred eagle, courageously borne by the aquilifer Marcus Cullus, whose name, a poignant testament, would later be etched onto memorial stones by his surviving relatives, became the desperate focal point of Roman resistance. The legionaries understood with chilling clarity that the loss of their standard, this venerable symbol of their honor and identity, would signify the ultimate military disgrace and a profound spiritual defeat. Recognizing this immense symbolic value, Germanic warriors deliberately concentrated their ferocious attacks on the eagle's position, knowing full well that its capture would not only shatter the morale of any remaining Roman resistance but also provide an incredibly potent trophy, capable of inspiring and galvanizing sustained tribal military efforts for generations to come. Meanwhile, the 18th Legion, strategically positioned in the column's center near the vulnerable baggage train, simultaneously faced overwhelming assaults from multiple directions. Germanic forces skillfully exploited the widespread confusion and tactical disarray created by the earlier assault on the 16th Legion, launching perfectly coordinated strikes against Roman positions that were already critically weakened by mounting casualties and profound tactical disorganization. Chatty warriors, having stealthily infiltrated the dense forest under the cover of night, now burst forth from concealed positions, enabling them to savagely attack the legion's vulnerable rear elements. Simultaneously, other Germanic fighters, perhaps Chauci or other tribal contingents, struck the unit's flanks, perfectly coordinating their actions with the broader, sweeping Germanic offensive. The legion's beleaguered commander, Lucius Mnemonius Valla, valiantly attempted to orchestrate a fighting withdrawal, desperately hoping to extract his forces from their increasingly untenable and precarious position. However, the very terrain features, narrow defile and dense woodland, that had initially channeled Roman movement now tragically prevented any effective tactical maneuver. Compounding their woes, the Germanic forces' intimate knowledge of the local geography allowed them to relentlessly harass any attempted Roman movement, turning every step into a deadly ordeal. The systematic and devastating destruction of this legion was a testament to sophisticated Germanic tactics, which chillingly demonstrated their profound understanding of Roman military psychology and the critical importance of unit standards in upholding legionary morale and cohesion. With ruthless efficiency, Germanic warriors deliberately targeted the legion's centurions and standard-bearers. They recognized, with keen tactical insight, that the swift elimination of these crucial leadership figures would dramatically accelerate the collapse of organized Roman resistance. Attacks against the centurions were executed with deadly precision, often involving coordinated volleys of spears from multiple warriors, concentrating their combined efforts on individual officers. Concurrently, efforts to seize the highly prized legionary standards invariably devolved into brutal, close-quarters combat, forcing Germanic fighters into direct, desperate engagement with the most resolute and unwavering Roman defenders. The sheer intensity and ferocity of these engagements vividly underscored the immense symbolic importance that both the Romans and the Germanic tribes ascribed to the military standards. For the Romans, these standards embodied their imperial authority and the very spirit of Rome. For the Germanic tribes, they represented the enduring symbol of their fierce resistance against foreign domination. The 19th Legion, positioned at the rear of the Roman column, initially demonstrated superior tactical cohesion. Its perceptive commander swiftly recognized the rapidly developing crisis and immediately endeavored to organize robust defensive positions, hoping to establish a vital rallying point for other embattled Roman forces. This legion's deployment into defensive formations proved markedly more successful than similar, desperate efforts by other units. The inherent advantages of its rearguard position offered a degree of protection from the initial, devastating Germanic assault, while also facilitating more effective communication with its subordinate units, allowing for a more coordinated, if temporary, defense. However, this fleeting tactical advantage proved tragically temporary. As Germanic forces overwhelmed the 13th and 18th legions, they mercilessly redirected their combined might against the remaining pockets of organized Roman resistance. The devastating concentration of the entire Germanic military effort against the 19th Legion created an overwhelming numerical superiority that brutally nullified any remaining Roman advantages in superior equipment and disciplined training, sealing their grim fate. The grim fate of Roman auxiliary units during the final, catastrophic assault served as a stark reflection of the complex loyalties and formidable tactical challenges inherent in frontier warfare, particularly when involving Allied troops recruited from recently conquered populations. Germanic auxiliaries, who had previously served loyally alongside Roman forces, were abruptly confronted with agonizing decisions regarding their allegiance as tribal warriors, some potentially even their own relatives, launched fierce attacks against their Roman comrades. In this brutal crucible, some auxiliary units steadfastly maintained their loyalty to Roman commanders, fighting valiantly alongside the legionary forces. Others, however, defected, choosing to join the triumphant Germanic assault, or simply fled the chaotic battlefield altogether, unable to bring themselves to fight against their own kin. The Gallic cavalry units, attached to Varus's ill-fated army, valiantly attempted to preserve their tactical mobility through desperate mounted withdrawal operations. Yet, the very same dense forest terrain that had so masterfully facilitated Germanic ambush tactics now tragically impeded any effective cavalry operations, which inherently demanded open ground for the crucial maneuvers and powerful charge tactics. Beyond the immediate carnage, the capture and subsequent ritualistic treatment of Roman prisoners constituted a profoundly crucial component of Germanic victory celebrations. These solemn rites vividly reflected deep-seated tribal religious beliefs and ancient military traditions that consistently emphasized the profound spiritual dimensions of warfare, viewing it as more than mere physical conflict. Germanic warriors, having successfully taken Roman captives, meticulously conducted elaborate ceremonial sacrifices. These sacred rites were performed not only to honor their revered gods but also to unequivocally demonstrate the utter completeness of their triumph over the imperial forces. These solemn rituals typically took place within hallowed sacred groves, sites that had been meticulously identified in advance as exceptionally appropriate locations for such profound religious ceremonies. Tribal priests, acting as spiritual guides, directed the precise sacrificial procedures, adhering strictly to traditional practices that had been faithfully observed for countless generations, even during their own intertribal conflicts. Among the sacrificial victims were high-ranking Roman officers, whose distinguished rank and valuable equipment identified them as particularly significant and valuable offerings to the gods. In contrast, ordinary legionaries were often subjected to enslavement or held for ransom, their freedom purchased by payments from their families. The systematic destruction of Roman military equipment served both practical and profoundly symbolic purposes for the Germanic victors. While tribal warriors efficiently stripped battlefield casualties of their valuable weapons and armor, they simultaneously engaged in the ritualistic destruction of objects that overtly represented Roman imperial authority, symbolically dismantling their power. Germanic smiths, accompanying the triumphant tribal forces, meticulously identified Roman weapons and armor that could be skillfully adapted for their own use, enhancing their military capabilities. However, deeply ingrained religious considerations often mandated the outright destruction of certain objects that possessed profound spiritual significance for the defeated Roman military units. Legionary standards, in particular, received specialized and intense attention. Germanic warriors, understanding their immense power, recognized these symbols not merely as ensigns but as potent sources of Roman military and spiritual power, necessitating their ritualistic neutralization to prevent any lingering, malign influence over tribal affairs and the spiritual landscape. Varus's tragic suicide during the final, desperate hours of the battle perfectly encapsulated the unyielding Roman military tradition, which demanded that commanders accept absolute personal responsibility for catastrophic defeats, simultaneously avoiding the profound dishonor of capture by enemy forces. The governor's death occurred within the confines of his own command tent, as the triumphant Germanic warriors relentlessly overran the last remaining Roman positions. Varus, facing inevitable capture, resolutely chose to fall on his sword, preferring a swift, honorable death over the intolerable humiliation of captivity and the severe political consequences that would undoubtedly have stemmed from his survival. The unprecedented loss of a governor of consular rank represented an unparalleled disaster for Roman imperial prestige. Never before had a provincial commander of equivalent stature been killed during military operations against so-called barbarian enemies, sending shockwaves throughout the empire. Varus's demise effectively eliminated the senior Roman leadership who might have conceivably organized any continued resistance, simultaneously providing Germanic forces with undeniable confirmation of their absolute and complete victory over imperial authority in the region. The broader, far-reaching implications of losing 3 entire legions extended dramatically beyond the immediate military consequences. It encompassed profound political, economic, and psychological effects that would irrevocably influence Roman policy for generations to come. The utter destruction of the 17th, 18th, and 19th legions signified the devastating loss of approximately 15,000 veteran soldiers. Their invaluable training and unparalleled experience, forged over years, could not be easily replaced. Furthermore, the elimination of their entire officer corps stripped Rome of critical institutional knowledge and leadership capabilities that had been painstakingly developed through decades of rigorous frontier service. Beyond the human cost, the immense financial burden of replacing these lost military units would severely strain already vast imperial resources, while the profound political ramifications would deeply impact Augustus's domestic authority and shape his foreign policy throughout the remaining years of his illustrious reign. The immediate Germanic treatment of the blood-soaked battlefield eloquently reflected deeply ingrained tribal customs concerning the precise distribution of spoils and the solemn commemoration of military victories, practices that would profoundly influence intertribal relationships for many years following the battle. Germanic warriors systematically and thoroughly stripped Roman casualties of their valuable equipment and personal possessions. The subsequent distribution procedures meticulously followed ancient, traditional protocols for equitably sharing spoils among the various tribal confederations that had participated in the hard-won victory. Weapons and armor deemed suitable for adaptation to Germanic use were carefully allocated to individual warriors, with consideration given to their specific contributions and valor during the battle. Conversely, precious metals and luxurious items were strictly reserved for tribal leaders, who would strategically utilize these valuable resources to reward their loyal followers and to solidify the crucial political alliances that had ultimately enabled the coordinated and successful resistance effort. The comprehensive recovery of Roman military equipment provided the Germanic tribes with substantial quantities of high-quality iron weapons and protective armor, assets that would undoubtedly enhance their military capabilities significantly during subsequent conflicts with imperial forces. The Roman gladius, in particular, represented a pinnacle of superior metallurgy and sophisticated weapon design, which Germanic smiths eagerly studied and eventually reproduced, raising their own craftsmanship. Furthermore, the robust legionary armor offered a level of protection that markedly surpassed traditional Germanic defensive equipment. Beyond weaponry, the captured Roman engineering tools and formidable siege equipment provided invaluable insights into advanced imperial military technology, knowledge that could be skillfully adapted for Germanic defensive preparations, bolstering their future resistance. While captured Roman military manuals and administrative documents offered invaluable intelligence regarding imperial strategic planning and intricate tactical procedures, the symbolic destruction of Roman military standards was a far more profound act, involving elaborate ceremonies. These rituals eloquently demonstrated deep-seated Germanic religious beliefs about the inherent spiritual aspects of warfare and the critical importance of neutralizing enemy sources of perceived supernatural power. Tribal priests meticulously conducted these sacred rituals, which included the ceremonial dismantling of the revered legionary eagles and cohort standards. The precious metals and decorative elements derived from these symbols were then carefully redistributed according to ancient religious protocols, simultaneously honoring the Germanic gods and effectively eliminating any lingering Roman spiritual influences from their lands. These significant ceremonies unfolded at hallowed sacred sites strategically located throughout Germanic territory. This widespread observance ensured that even tribal communities who had not directly participated in the monumental battle could bear witness to the profound destruction of Roman imperial symbols, thereby fully grasping the absolute completeness and spiritual significance of the Germanic victory. The subsequent treatment of Roman civilian personnel who had accompanied Varus's ill-fated army provided a clear window into Germanic attitudes toward non-combatants and the substantial economic opportunities that such captives represented for their tribal communities. Merchants, administrators, and various camp followers who miraculously survived the brutal battle found themselves facing either enslavement or stringent ransom demands, both of which promised to provide ongoing and significant economic benefits for their Germanic captors. Furthermore, the specialized skills possessed by some of these civilians, particularly those adept in metalworking, engineering, or administrative capabilities, rendered them exceptionally valuable assets for the tribal communities. These communities could ingeniously utilize Roman technical knowledge and expertise for their own strategic and developmental purposes, significantly advancing their own societal capabilities. The eventual integration of Roman captives into Germanic society proved to be a transformative process, introducing novel technologies and administrative methods that would profoundly influence tribal development for generations to come, following the momentous victory in the Teutoburg Forest. The very first, fragmentary reports of this unimaginable disaster in Germania painstakingly reached Emperor Augustus through the highly efficient imperial post system in early October of 9 AD. These dire tidings were delivered by utterly exhausted cavalry messengers, who had ridden relentlessly and with desperate urgency from the distant Rhine frontier, carrying news that would fundamentally and irrevocably alter the entire trajectory of Roman imperial policy. These initial dispatches, painstakingly composed by surviving officers who had witnessed the utter destruction from the relative safety of Rhine River positions, contained only the barest, most shocking details about the true scale of the catastrophe that had befallen Varus's army. While the messages unequivocally confirmed that 3 entire legions had been completely annihilated in the dark depths of the Teutoburg Forest, the full, devastating implications of this unprecedented military disaster would only gradually become apparent as additional, more complete intelligence trickled into the imperial capital over the course of the subsequent weeks. Emperor Augustus received the truly devastating news while engaged in routine administrative business within the serene confines of his private study on the illustrious Palatine Hill. He was surrounded by the exquisite marble statues and classical Greek artwork that so eloquently reflected his refined cultural preferences and his monumental political achievements. The emperor's immediate reaction, witnessed firsthand by several awestruck court officials and later meticulously recorded by imperial biographers, powerfully demonstrated the profound and shattering psychological impact that the Germanic disaster inflicted upon the aging ruler. This was a man who had dedicated decades of his life to painstakingly constructing and solidifying Roman military supremacy, only to see it crumble. Augustus, reportedly overcome with anguish, famously struck his head against the doorframe of his study, crying out the legendary lament that would forever echo through Roman historical memory. Quintili Vare, legions redde! Varus, give me back my legions! The intense personal grief that overwhelmed Augustus reflected not merely the staggering military significance of losing 3 veteran legions, but also the deep, emotional bonds that connected the emperor to the countless soldiers who had served imperial interests faithfully throughout his extensive reign. Many of the esteemed officers and centurions who tragically perished in the Teutoburg Forest had previously participated in the pivotal campaigns that firmly established Augustus's political authority, fighting valiantly in the civil wars that brought an end to the Roman Republic and in the foreign conquests that dramatically expanded imperial boundaries. Indeed, the emperor had personally awarded prestigious decorations to some of these very men during triumphant victory celebrations in Rome, forging personal relationships that rendered their deaths akin to the profound grief of family losses, rather than mere abstract military casualties. The emperor's physical and mental deterioration following the devastating news became immediately and alarmingly apparent to vigilant court observers. They noted his conspicuous inability to maintain the traditionally composed and dignified demeanor that had invariably characterized his public appearances throughout his entire reign. Augustus abruptly ceased his regular morning receptions for senators and foreign ambassadors, simultaneously canceling the numerous public festivals and ceremonial appearances that typically occupied a significant portion of his daily schedule. Palace servants recounted unsettling observations. The emperor was often seen wandering the vast corridors of his residence during the desolate nighttime hours, frequently pausing before the marble busts of deceased family members, muttering incoherently about treacherous Germanic betrayals and the abysmal Roman military failures. His hair, which had always remained meticulously groomed throughout his long and distinguished political career, now grew disheveled and unkempt, a stark symbol of Augustus's neglect of the personal hygiene routines that had previously reflected his unwavering attention to imperial dignity. The strategic implications of the Germanic disaster extended dramatically far beyond the immediate and tragic loss of military personnel. It forced a profound re-evaluation of fundamental questions concerning Roman imperial expansion and, more acutely, the security of existing provincial territories. The utter destruction of 3 legions alone represented approximately 15% of the entire Roman army, a catastrophic and unprecedented reduction in military capability that would demand years of concerted effort to replace through arduous recruitment and rigorous training programs. More critically, the complete annihilation of Varus's forces had effectively eliminated the primary military strength that had previously sustained Roman authority throughout Germania. This created dangerous and widespread opportunities for tribal uprisings, which could easily spread beyond the immediate disaster zone to gravely threaten established Roman positions along the vital Rhine frontier, potentially undoing decades of conquest. The emergency military mobilization that Augustus immediately ordered in response to the profound Germanic crisis necessitated unprecedented peacetime recruitment efforts. These measures severely strained Roman manpower resources, simultaneously disrupting the vital economic activities that underpinned imperial finances. With grim determination, the emperor commanded provincial governors throughout the vast empire to dramatically accelerate military recruitment, while simultaneously suspending the normal exemptions that had previously protected certain social classes from military service. Seasoned veterans who had already completed their standard terms of enlistment received urgent orders to return to active duty, and in a drastic move, the minimum age requirements for military service were significantly reduced. This desperate measure allowed for the recruitment of younger men, even those who still lacked the full physical development traditionally demanded by rigorous Roman military standards, underscoring the severity of the crisis. The immediate recall of Tiberius from his crucial Illyrian command represented Augustus's most significant and strategically vital decision in response to the escalating Germanic crisis. The sagacious emperor recognized, with stark clarity, that only his most experienced and capable military commander possessed the extraordinary capabilities necessary for effectively managing the exceedingly complex defensive operations that were now absolutely essential for securing the precarious frontier. Tiberius, a proven military genius, had been conducting highly successful campaigns in Illyricum, demonstrating his unparalleled skill and strategic acumen, making him the sole hope for Rome's shattered northern defenses. Campaigns against the Pannonian and Dalmatian tribes when he was suddenly issued urgent orders to redirect his forces to the Rhine frontier. This abrupt command forced him to abandon territorial gains that had taken 3 years of arduous fighting to secure. This strategic withdrawal from Aricum clearly demonstrated Augustus's evolving assessment of imperial priorities, as he now perceived Germanic threats as posing more immediate and severe dangers to Roman security than the ongoing Balkan tribal resistance that Tiberius had been steadily suppressing. The sheer logistical scale of transferring Tiberius's army from Urcum to Germania presented immense coordination challenges. These efforts rigorously tested the limits of Roman administrative capabilities while simultaneously showcasing the empire's remarkable capacity for rapid strategic redeployment. For legions, accompanied by substantial auxiliary forces, had to be transported across the formidable Alps during late autumn, when treacherous weather conditions made the mountain passes exceptionally perilous for large military formations. The army's extensive baggage trains included specialized siege equipment, artillery pieces, and intricate engineering tools that had been specifically designed for aerial operations. Yet, these would prove unexpectedly valuable for establishing the robust defensive positions required along the Rhine frontier. To support this massive movement, supply depots throughout northern Italy received urgent orders to accumulate vast provisions for the relocated forces. Meanwhile, dedicated road maintenance crews worked frantically to repair and reinforce the mountain routes that would bear the weight of this enormous military migration. Tiberius's arrival at the Rhine frontier in November of 980 signaled the formal commencement of comprehensive defensive preparations that would fundamentally transform Roman military strategy from one of aggressive expansion to one of frontier consolidation. The newly appointed commander immediately directed the construction of additional fortifications along the Rhine's eastern bank, while simultaneously strengthening existing installations that had previously functioned primarily as mere supply bases for offensive operations conducted beyond the river. These extensive defensive improvements mobilized thousands of auxiliary troops and civilian laborers who toiled tirelessly throughout the harsh winter months. Their collective efforts were dedicated to creating the formidable earthwork barriers and sturdy timber palisades that would safeguard Roman positions against any potential Germanic invasions. The diligent intelligence-gathering efforts initiated by Tiberius unveiled the alarming extent of Germanic coordination that had made the Teutoburg Forest victory possible. These insights also provided a crucial understanding of tribal military capabilities, which Roman commanders had significantly underestimated in the past. Surviving auxiliaries who had miraculously escaped the disaster furnished detailed accounts of Germanic tactical methods and the sophisticated planning that had meticulously orchestrated Arminius's devastating ambush operations. These compelling reports confirmed that Germanic tribes possessed levels of military organization and strategic thinking abilities that far surpassed Roman assessments. Furthermore, they exposed the intricate political alliances that had enabled unprecedented intertribal cooperation against imperial forces. The profound psychological impact of the Germanic disaster on the Rhine frontier garrisons demanded immediate attention from Roman commanders, who acutely recognized that demoralized troops would be utterly ineffective against determined Germanic attacks. Legionary units that had for years maintained security along the Rhine without encountering serious military challenges now confronted the stark reality that Germanic tribes held the devastating capability to destroy entire Roman armies through coordinated resistance operations. Tiberius directly addressed these pervasive morale problems by implementing increased training exercises, which meticulously restored confidence in Roman tactical superiority, while also instituting robust security measures that substantially reduced the vulnerability of frontier positions to sudden surprise attacks. The profound political ramifications of the Teutoburg Forest disaster reverberated throughout Roman governmental institutions. Senators and other aristocratic leaders openly questioned the strategic wisdom of continuing Germanic expansion efforts, Conservative political factions, which had previously been staunch supporters of Augustus's foreign policy initiatives, now vehemently argued for defensive strategies that would consolidate existing territorial gains rather than pursuing additional conquests that might lead to similar, devastating catastrophes. These intense political debates unfolded within the broader and critical context of succession planning. Augustus's advancing age naturally raised pressing questions about imperial continuity and the military capabilities of potential heirs who visibly lacked the emperor's extensive combat experience. The senatorial discussions concerning Germanic policy exposed fundamental disagreements about the core tenets of Roman imperial strategy, and the appropriate balance that needed to be struck between military expansion and territorial consolidation. Supporters of continued offensive operations passionately argued that abandoning Germanic conquest would inevitably encourage tribal resistance throughout the frontier regions, simultaneously demonstrating Roman weakness to potential enemies across the entire empire. Conservative senators, however, countered that the enormous costs associated with Germanic campaigns far exceeded the potential benefits of territorial acquisition, especially given the region's limited agricultural productivity and the substantial military commitments that any permanent occupation would undeniably require. The financial implications of the Germanic disaster extended far beyond the immediate costs of replacing lost military equipment and personnel. They encompass broader and more critical questions about imperial fiscal policy and the economic sustainability of continued expansion efforts. The annihilation of 3 legions had obliterated substantial investments in military training and equipment, while simultaneously necessitating emergency expenditures for defensive preparations that would severely strain imperial finances. Moreover, the tribute revenues that Roman administrators had confidently expected to collect from pacified Germanic territories would never materialize. While the considerable costs of maintaining enlarged frontier garrisons would persist indefinitely without generating any compensating economic benefits, the propaganda efforts that Augustus initiated to minimize the disaster's impact on Roman prestige demanded meticulous attention to both domestic and international audiences. Each group would undoubtedly interpret the Germanic victory according to their own distinct political interests. Within Rome itself, imperial propagandists emphasized the inherently treacherous nature of Germanic tactics, while simultaneously highlighting the heroic resistance that Roman forces had valiantly maintained despite facing overwhelming odds. These carefully constructed narratives portrayed the Teutoburg Forest battle as merely a temporary setback, directly caused by cunning enemy deception, rather than symptomatic of fundamental weaknesses in Roman military capabilities or strategic planning. The international implications of Roman military failure in Germania created significant diplomatic challenges throughout the empire. Client kingdoms and tribal allies meticulously reassessed their existing relationships with imperial authority. Germanic tribal leaders who had previously maintained loyalty to Rome, despite deep cultural connections to Germanic confederations, now faced immense pressure from their own populations to reconsider their political alignments. The Germanic victory had unequivocally demonstrated that Roman military power could indeed be defeated through coordinated resistance, providing powerful inspiration for potential uprisings throughout the frontier regions where imperial control remained tenuous and susceptible. The religious dimensions of Rome's response to the Germanic disaster deeply reflected the spiritual beliefs that intrinsically connected military success with divine favor, and the critical importance of maintaining proper relationships with the gods who were believed to protect imperial interests. Augustus promptly ordered special sacrificial ceremonies at major temples across Rome, while also consulting the revered Sibylline books for divine guidance regarding appropriate responses to the unfolding crisis. These religious observances served a dual purpose, functioning as both spiritual and political instruments. They demonstrably showcased imperial piety while simultaneously providing valuable opportunities for public displays of confidence that could effectively counteract the widespread demoralization that military defeat might otherwise inspire among Roman citizens. The memorial arrangements for the destroyed legions presented complex challenges, as Roman tradition strictly required proper burial ceremonies for fallen soldiers. While the Germanic victory had tragically prevented the recovery of most casualties from the battlefield, Augustus shrewdly ordered the construction of commemorative monuments in Rome. These monuments were designed to honor the deceased legionaries while artfully avoiding any explicit acknowledgement of the defeat's true magnitude. These memorials meticulously emphasized the soldiers' unwavering loyalty and courage, while minimizing any direct references to the tactical failures that had so tragically enabled the Germanic victory. The emperor also prudently established pension arrangements for the families of deceased officers, a gesture that powerfully demonstrated imperial concern for military personnel while simultaneously maintaining the crucial loyalty of surviving troops who observed these generous provisions. The recruitment campaigns that followed the Germanic disaster necessitated fundamental changes to Roman military service policies. Traditional volunteer enlistment proved utterly insufficient to replace the enormous personnel losses represented by the annihilated legions. Augustus thus authorized the conscription of Roman citizens who had previously been exempt from military service, while also extending recruitment efforts to include populations that had traditionally been excluded from legionary service. These radical policy changes clearly reflected the desperate manpower situation that the empire confronted, while simultaneously establishing precedents that would profoundly influence Roman military organization for subsequent generations. The training programs developed for replacement legions carefully incorporated lessons learned from the Teutoburg Forest disaster, while diligently maintaining the tactical traditions that had consistently enabled Roman military success throughout the Mediterranean world. New recruits received enhanced instruction in forest warfare and irregular tactics, specifically designed to prepare them for the challenging and unconventional conditions that characterized Germanic military operations. These meticulously implemented training modifications acknowledged the unique requirements of frontier warfare, while still carefully preserving the disciplined formations and standardized equipment that remained absolutely essential for Roman tactical effectiveness against conventional enemies. The defensive strategy that emerged from Roman responses to the Germanic crisis represented a fundamental paradigm shift. It moved away from the expansionist policies that had characterized Augustus's early reign towards consolidation efforts that primarily emphasized the diligent protection of existing territorial gains. The Rhine frontier was thus destined to become a permanent boundary rather than merely a temporary staging area for further conquests. This new reality necessitated massive investments in fortifications and garrison forces, which would irrevocably transform the very character of Roman military deployment. This strategic reorientation reflected both the practical constraints imposed by relentless Germanic resistance and the harsh political realities that limited imperial willingness to accept additional risks comparable to the Teutoburg Forest catastrophe. The strategic reorientation that followed the Teutoburg Forest disaster immediately created urgent demands for military leadership capable of restoring Roman prestige while effectively implementing the defensive consolidation that Augustus had reluctantly accepted as absolutely necessary for imperial security. The emperor's astute selection of Germanicus Julius Caesar for command of the Rhine armies in 13 AD represented a carefully calculated decision that perfectly balanced critical political considerations with indispensable military requirements. As a young general, Germanicus possessed both the essential aristocratic credentials necessary for commanding major military operations and the proven tactical competence that the demands of frontier warfare imperatively required. Germanicus brought to his new assignment extensive and invaluable experience from the Pannonian campaigns, where he had distinguished himself through innovative tactical adaptations and exceptional leadership qualities. These qualities had inspired unwavering loyalty among his subordinate commanders and enlisted personnel alike. The appointment carried profound symbolic significance that extended far beyond immediate military considerations. It encompassed broader questions about imperial succession and the political legitimacy of Augustus's intricate dynastic arrangements. Germanicus represented the third generation of the Julian family's distinguished military leadership, meticulously following the precedents established by Julius Caesar and Augustus himself. He would demonstrate aristocratic competence in commanding Roman armies during critical strategic situations. His Germanic assignment would provide invaluable opportunities to establish the military reputation that political advancement critically required, while simultaneously serving imperial interests through the crucial restoration of Roman authority along the northern frontier, which had been so catastrophically compromised by Varus's devastating defeat. The Rhine command that Germanicus inherited in 13 AD encompassed 8 legions, meticulously distributed among fortified positions that stretched from the North Sea coast all the way to the headquarters of the Rhine near Lake Constance. This formidable force represented approximately 40,000 legionary troops, augmented by substantial auxiliary forces shrewdly recruited from Germanic tribes and other allied populations. These formidable military units had diligently spent the previous 4 years conducting defensive operations. These operations successfully prevented Germanic raids across the Rhine while meticulously maintaining the territorial integrity of Roman Gaul against tribal incursions that might have exploited the power vacuum devastatingly created by the Teutoburg Forest victory. The defensive posture that had characterized Rhine frontier operations since 9 AD had not only preserved Roman territorial control but had also, crucially, created opportunities for the systematic military preparations that would enable future offensive operations against the formidable Germanic tribal confederations. The systematic and meticulous preparation that Germanicus initiated for retaliatory campaigns against Germania required a comprehensive and painstaking analysis of the tactical failures that had enabled the Teutoburg Forest disaster. This analysis was crucial for developing effective countermeasures that could prevent similar catastrophes during future offensive operations. Intelligence reports, meticulously compiled from surviving auxiliaries and dedicated reconnaissance missions, revealed the sophisticated coordination that Arminius had achieved among tribal confederations. These reports also precisely identified the specific tactical methods that had proven so devastatingly effective against Roman military formations in the challenging forested terrain. These critical assessments provided the indispensable foundation for new training programs. These programs were specifically designed to prepare Roman forces for the unique and formidable challenges that Germanic warfare presented, while meticulously maintaining the disciplined formations that remained absolutely essential for Roman tactical effectiveness. The extensive logistical infrastructure that supported Germanicus's offensive preparations involved massive construction projects. These transformed Rhine frontier installations from mere defensive positions into robust forward operating bases, fully capable of sustaining major military campaigns far beyond the river. Engineering units meticulously constructed expanded harbor facilities at Montium and Colonia Agrippina, Colonia Agrena in text. These expanded facilities could now comfortably accommodate the extensive river fleet operations that were absolutely essential for penetrating Germanic territory through crucial waterway access routes. This strategy cleverly avoided the perilous forest paths where Varus's army had been so catastrophically destroyed. These crucial harbor improvements included specialized docking facilities expertly designed for shallow draft vessels, engineered specifically for riverine operations. They were complemented by extensive warehouses and supply depots that could meticulously accumulate the vast provisions necessary for extended campaigns in territories notoriously lacking the agricultural surplus to support large military formations. The Rhine fleet expansion, which accompanied these significant infrastructure improvements, represented one of the most substantial naval construction programs undertaken during Augustus's entire reign. It involved the meticulous production of hundreds of specialized vessels, each designed for the unique and demanding requirements of riverine warfare in Germanic territorial waters. Roman shipwrights skillfully adapted existing Mediterranean naval technology to create innovative flat-bottomed galleys. These vessels were ingeniously capable of navigating the seasonal variations in river depth while simultaneously carrying substantial loads of troops and vital equipment. These innovative vessels incorporated crucial defensive features that provided essential protection against Germanic missile attacks, while meticulously maintaining the maneuverability necessary for rapid deployment and swift extraction operations in hostile territory. The recruitment and rigorous training programs that Germanicus meticulously implemented to prepare his forces for Germanic operations carefully incorporated lessons learned from the Teutoburg Forest disaster, while diligently maintaining the tactical traditions that had consistently enabled Roman military success throughout the empire. New legionary recruits received enhanced instruction in forest warfare techniques. These techniques explicitly emphasized small unit coordination and individual initiative, rather than the rigid, large formations that had proven so tragically vulnerable to Germanic ambush tactics. These meticulous training modifications included extensive practice in rapid deployment from marching columns into effective defensive formations suitable for dense forest combat. Additionally, specialized instruction was provided in recognizing and expertly countering the insidious harassment tactics that Germanic warriors had employed so effectively against Varus's army. The sophisticated intelligence networks that Germanicus meticulously established throughout Germanic territory required the careful cultivation of informants. These informants were capable of providing reliable information about tribal political dynamics and crucial military preparations, while simultaneously avoiding the cunning deception tactics that had enabled Arminius's successful ambush operations. Roman agents ingeniously recruited Germanic merchants and refugees who possessed detailed and invaluable knowledge of tribal territories and intricate political relationships. Concurrently, they established secure communication systems that could rapidly relay critical information to Roman commanders without compromising source security. These vital intelligence operations consistently revealed the continuing political divisions among Germanic tribes. These divisions could be strategically exploited through diplomatic initiatives precisely designed to isolate Arminius and his allies from potential supporters. The first major offensive that Germanicus launched in 14 AD specifically targeted the Marsy Confederation. Their territory lay east of the Rhine, strategically positioned between the Ruhr and Lippe rivers, and they represented one of the tribal groups that had participated most actively in the devastating Teutoburg Forest ambush. The campaign commenced with meticulously coordinated river and overland movements that vividly demonstrated the tactical innovations Germanicus had meticulously developed for Germanic operations. He skillfully utilized the formidable Rhine fleet to transport substantial forces directly into Marsy territory, thereby cleverly avoiding the perilous forest routes that had proven so dangerous for Roman armies. This amphibious assault achieved complete tactical surprise through precise timing and flawless coordination, enabling Roman forces to rapidly establish secure beachheads before Germanic defenders could organize any effective resistance. The systematic destruction that characterized Roman operations against the Marsy reflected both tactical necessity and the profound psychological warfare that Germanicus strategically employed to vividly demonstrate the dire consequences of resistance to Roman authority. Roman forces conducted methodical and ruthless devastation of Marsy settlements, extensive agricultural areas, and revered religious sites. These sites served as crucial focal points for tribal identity and sophisticated political organization. The deliberate destruction of sacred groves, where tribal assemblies traditionally convened, effectively eliminated. These were the crucial meeting grounds where Germanic tribes forged their political alliances and coordinated their actions. The subsequent capture and execution of tribal leaders were devastating, as it effectively eliminated the most experienced war chiefs who held invaluable military knowledge, severely hampering any future capacity for organized resistance operations. The successful recovery of one of the lost legionary eagles during the campaign against the Marsy provided a profoundly powerful symbolic validation for Rome's revenge operations. More importantly, it served as a potent demonstration that Germanic tribal confederations could not indefinitely maintain permanent possession of these sacred military standards, which were potent symbols of imperial authority and Roman might. This particular eagle, belonging to the 14th Legion, was discovered hidden within a sacred grove of the Marsy, where it had been proudly displayed as a trophy of Germanic victory. Its recovery immediately became the centerpiece for elaborate ceremonial observances, which not only significantly boosted Roman military morale but also provided invaluable propaganda opportunities, effectively countering the profound demoralization caused by the devastating Teutoburg Forest disaster. The triumphant recovery of these lost standards allowed Germanicus to boldly claim that Roman honor had been substantially restored through decisive military action against the very tribes responsible for Rome's earlier humiliations and devastating defeats. The meticulous winter preparations that followed the campaign against the Marsy involved comprehensive planning for a greatly expanded series of operations. These initiatives were designed to systematically target every tribal confederation that had participated in the infamous Teutoburg Forest ambush, while simultaneously showcasing overwhelming Roman military capabilities to neutral Germanic populations who might otherwise have contemplated resistance activities. Germanicus astutely utilized the seasonal suspension of major military operations to conduct extensive reconnaissance across Germanic territory. During this period, he systematically gathered crucial intelligence regarding tribal military capabilities and their intricate political relationships, all of which would profoundly influence the planning of subsequent campaigns. These extensive preparatory activities included the establishment of forward supply depots and the creation of robust communication networks, all designed to facilitate highly coordinated operations across numerous tribal territories during the upcoming campaign season. The campaigns of 15 AD, in essence, represented the culmination of Germanicus' meticulously systematic approach to Germanic warfare. This involved complex, highly coordinated operations against multiple tribal confederations, which not only demonstrated remarkable Roman tactical adaptability but also achieved significant territorial objectives. The primary offensive directly targeted Cherusite territory along the Veda River, striking straight at Arminius's primary tribal base. This bold move was simultaneously aimed at capturing or eliminating the formidable Germanic leader whose tactical innovations had previously enabled the devastating Teutoburg Forest victory. Roman forces advanced along multiple axes, a strategy that effectively prevented the concentration of Germanic defensive forces, while meticulously maintaining the robust communication and mutual support capabilities that had been so conspicuously lacking during Varus's fatal march. The ensuing Battle of Idaso, fought near the Weser River in the late spring of 15 AD, unequivocally demonstrated both the significant tactical improvements Germanicus had successfully implemented in Roman Germanic operations and the persistent, inherent challenges that forest warfare continued to present for traditional imperial military formations. Under Arminius's command, Germanic forces endeavored to replicate the devastating ambush tactics that had proven so successful in the Teutoburg Forest. However, Roman tactical adaptations and vastly improved intelligence prevented the complete surprise that had characterized their earlier disaster. The engagement resulted in heavy Germanic casualties, while simultaneously enabling Roman forces to maintain their tactical cohesion and successfully achieve their immediate operational objectives. Though Arminius himself eluded capture despite sustaining serious wounds during the fighting, the systematic devastation wrought by Roman military operations throughout 15 AD extended far beyond immediate tactical objectives, instead designed to encompass broader strategic goals that powerfully underscored the severe long-term consequences of resistance to imperial authority. Roman forces embarked on a comprehensive and systematic destruction of Germanic agricultural infrastructure, which included the burning of vital grain stores and the wholesale slaughter of livestock, essential resources that tribal communities desperately required for survival through the harsh winter months. These devastating operations deliberately created profound humanitarian crises, effectively forcing Germanic populations to choose between continued, costly resistance and submission to Roman demands for tribute and complete political subordination. Furthermore, the recovery of the 18th Legion's eagle during operations against the Brutality provided further symbolic validation for Roman revenge campaigns, unequivocally underscoring the systematic and relentless nature of Germanicus' approach to restoring imperial prestige. The discovery of this second lost legionary standard, found within yet another sacred grove, further confirmed Germanic religious practices concerning the treatment of captured Roman military symbols. This recovery simultaneously provided invaluable opportunities for ceremonial observances that profoundly reinforced Roman military morale. The recovery of this eagle enabled Germanicus to claim significant progress toward fully avenging the Teutoburg Forest disaster, thereby securely maintaining crucial political support for continued offensive operations. The campaigns of 16 AD marked the final major Roman offensive operations conducted beyond the Rhine River. These campaigns represented both the tactical pinnacle of Germanicus' aggressive Germanic strategy and, crucially, revealed the fundamental strategic limitations that would ultimately compel the imperial abandonment of any permanent conquest objectives in the region. The campaign season commenced with an unprecedented scale of elaborate preparations, involving the largest Roman military force ever assembled for Germanic operations since Varus's disaster. This formidable force included elements drawn from multiple legions, substantial auxiliary contingents, and the entire Rhine fleet, which had been meticulously developed specifically for these ambitious operations. The unprecedented scale of Roman military commitment unequivocally demonstrated Rome's unwavering imperial determination to achieve decisive results. However, it also tacitly acknowledged that future opportunities for comparable operations would inevitably be severely limited by burgeoning political and financial constraints. The naval operations that so distinguished the 16 AD campaigns represented a truly innovative application of Roman maritime technology, meticulously adapted to the challenging conditions of riverine warfare, a feat never before attempted on such a massive scale. Germanicus ingeniously utilized the Rhine fleet to transport entire legions directly to Germanic coastal regions near the EMS Rivermouth, establishing secure forward bases capable of supporting extended operations. This innovative approach thereby circumvented the treacherous overland routes that remained highly vulnerable to Germanic ambush tactics. These complex amphibious operations necessitated sophisticated coordination between naval and land military commanders, while simultaneously demonstrating remarkable Roman engineering capabilities and their adaptability in applying Mediterranean maritime techniques to the unique and often harsh northern European environmental conditions. The climactic recovery of the 16th Legion's Eagle during operations against Germanic coastal tribes symbolically completed the full restoration of Roman military honor. This achievement also provided potent propaganda materials that Germanicus could proudly present to Augustus as irrefutable evidence of successful revenge against the perpetrators of the Teutoburg Forest disaster. The discovery of this third and final legionary standard conclusively confirmed that all 3 eagles lost during Varus's disaster had been successfully recovered through systematic military operations. This triumph thereby enabled Roman propagandists to boldly claim that imperial honor had been fully and completely restored, skillfully sidestepping the inconvenient truth of the continuing independence of most Germanic tribal confederations. The recovery of these eagles provided tangible, undeniable evidence of Roman military success, which could be leveraged to effectively counter mounting domestic political criticism regarding the enormous financial and human costs that the Germanic campaigns had exacted. The profound strategic limitations that became starkly apparent during the 16 AD campaigns reflected fundamental, inherent constraints on Roman imperial expansion. These limitations extended far beyond immediate tactical considerations, instead compelling a re-evaluation to encompass much broader and more fundamental questions about the long-term economic and political sustainability of any permanent Germanic conquest. The immense distances involved in maintaining extended supply lines to forward operating bases necessitated enormous logistical commitments that severely strained already stretched imperial resources, all while yielding comparatively limited strategic benefits. Crucially, Germanic territory conspicuously lacked the established urban centers and significant agricultural surplus that had rendered Mediterranean conquest economically viable and profitable for Roman administration elsewhere. Moreover, the decentralized tribal political structures inherent to Germanic society proved remarkably resistant to the centralized administrative methods that had enabled successful Roman provincial government in other conquered territories. The growing political opposition that emerged within Rome regarding continued Germanic operations reflected deep senatorial concerns about the exorbitant costs of these campaigns relative to their meager territorial achievements and negligible economic benefits. Conservative political factions vociferously argued that Germanicus operations, while undeniably tactically successful, had ultimately failed to achieve the permanent conquest objectives that alone could justify their massive resource requirements. These critics emphatically emphasized that Germanic tribal confederations largely retained their political independence and formidable military capabilities, despite suffering significant casualties during Rome's arduous revenge campaigns. This reality strongly suggested that any attempt at permanent occupation would demand military commitments that far exceeded imperial capacity for indefinite maintenance. Augustus' momentous decision to recall Germanicus and terminate major offensive operations beyond the Rhine represented a profound imperial acknowledgement that comprehensive Germanic conquest simply exceeded practical Roman capabilities. This decision simultaneously recognized that crucial symbolic objectives regarding military honor had been sufficiently achieved through the successful revenge campaigns. The emperor's strategic assessment conclusively determined that the Rhine frontier provided adequate, defensible security for Roman Gaul. Furthermore, it offered inherent defensive advantages that could be maintained with substantially reduced military commitments compared to the astronomical forces required for any permanent Germanic occupation. This strategic reorientation reflected both the harsh practical constraints imposed by relentless Germanic resistance and the immutable political realities that severely limited imperial willingness to accept the enormous, ongoing financial and human costs that successful conquest would have invariably required. The establishment of the Rhine as a permanent imperial frontier, rather than merely a temporary staging area for further eastward expansion, represented one of the most profoundly significant strategic decisions of Augustus' entire reign. This decision fundamentally altered Roman imperial policy from one of seemingly unlimited expansion to a more pragmatic, selective consolidation of existing territorial gains. This strategic reorientation, forcibly imposed by the catastrophic events in the Teutoburg Forest and the subsequent, stark recognition of formidable Germanic resistance capabilities, created immediate and profoundly lasting consequences that would irrevocably shape the trajectory of Roman imperial development for the next 4 centuries. The abandonment of the Elbe frontier objective represented not merely a tactical adjustment, but a profound, fundamental acknowledgement that Roman military and administrative capabilities possessed inherent practical limitations that simply could not be overcome through traditional imperial methods of conquest and occupation. The immediate administrative consequences of this strategic shift necessitated a comprehensive reorganization of Roman military deployment and frontier management systems throughout northern Europe. The 8 legions that had been concentrated along the Rhine for offensive operations beyond the river now assumed permanent defensive responsibilities, fundamentally transforming their organizational structures and tactical training programs. These military units established elaborate fortification systems that extended along the Rhine's entire course, from its mountainous headquarters in the Alps to its mouth at the North Sea, thereby creating an integrated defensive network capable of monitoring and controlling Germanic tribal movements, while effectively preventing large-scale raids into Roman Gaul. The construction of permanent, robust stone fortifications replaced the temporary timber installations that had previously characterized Rhine frontier positions, unequivocally demonstrating imperial commitment to the indefinite maintenance of this vital defensive line. The economic implications of this frontier consolidation extended far beyond immediate military costs, reaching instead to encompass much broader and more profound questions about imperial fiscal policy and the intricate relationship between territorial expansion and sustainable revenue generation. The Germanic territories that Rome had abandoned represented substantial potential sources of tribute, agricultural production, and valuable mineral extraction that would now, definitively, never contribute to imperial finances. Specifically, the rich iron deposits of central Germania, the lucrative amber trade routes connecting the Baltic coast with Mediterranean markets, and the vast agricultural surplus that systematic Roman administration might have meticulously developed, all remain tantalizingly beyond imperial control. These substantial lost economic opportunities, therefore, compelled imperial administrators to intensify the exploitation of existing provincial territories while vigorously seeking alternative sources of revenue that could adequately compensate for the abandoned Germanic resources. The profound psychological impact of accepting permanent limitations on Roman expansion created profound and lasting changes in imperial ideology and, consequently, in the cultural narratives that sustained Roman political authority. The traditional Roman concept of imperium sine fine, an empire without limits, necessitated a fundamental reinterpretation in light of the harsh practical constraints that had been so dramatically revealed and underscored by formidable Germanic resistance. In response, imperial propagandists swiftly developed alternative ideological frameworks that emphatically emphasized the inherent perfection and optimal nature of existing territorial arrangements, rather than the pursuit of continued, costly expansion. This new narrative portrayed the Rhine frontier as a divinely ordained, eternal boundary that represented the optimal and ultimate extent of Roman civilization, rather than merely a temporary obstacle to further conquest. The subsequent transformation of Germanic tribal development following the Teutoburg Forest victory profoundly demonstrated the broader historical significance of successful resistance to Roman imperial expansion. The innovative confederation structures that Arminius had so effectively created to coordinate anti-Roman activities provided potent organizational models that profoundly influenced Germanic political evolution for generations, long after the immediate military crisis had passed. Tribal leaders who had participated in these coordinated resistance efforts possessed significantly enhanced prestige and political authority. This newfound influence enabled them to maintain larger military followings and exercise control over broader geographic territories than traditional, more localized Germanic political structures had previously supported or allowed. The emergence of the Alemanni Confederation during the 3rd century AD represented a direct and discernible continuation of the political innovations that had originated with Arminius's highly effective anti-Roman coalition. The tribal groups that formed the Alemanni maintained organizational structures and military traditions that directly reflected the harsh lessons learned during the Teutoburg Forest period. These structures emphasized coordinated resistance to foreign invasion while carefully preserving individual tribal autonomy within broader Confederate arrangements. The Alemanni's subsequent military successes against Roman frontier positions clearly demonstrated the remarkable long-term effectiveness of the political and military innovations that had been developed during the initial, pivotal Germanic resistance to imperial expansion. The Frankish Confederation that emerged in the Lower Rhine region similarly reflected the enduring influence of early Germanic resistance experiences on tribal political development. The Franks skillfully incorporated military and administrative techniques that had proven highly effective against Roman forces, while expertly adapting these methods to the changing strategic environment that characterized warfare in the late imperial period. The Confederation's eventual conquest of Roman Gaul and the subsequent establishment of the Frankish kingdom unequivocally demonstrated the ultimate and profound success of Germanic political evolution, a trajectory that had begun with the determined resistance to Augustus' expansion efforts. The cultural memory of the Teutoburg Forest victory became deeply embedded in Germanic oral traditions, which meticulously preserved detailed accounts of the battle and its profound significance for tribal independence. These narrative traditions emphatically emphasized the paramount importance of coordinated resistance to foreign domination, while celebrating the ingenious tactical innovations that had enabled Germanic victory over supposedly superior Roman military forces. The stories that commemorated Arminius's leadership provided powerful cultural models for subsequent Germanic leaders who faced similar challenges from formidable external threats, while simultaneously reinforcing core tribal values that prioritized political autonomy and military effectiveness. The process of mythologization surrounding Arminius within Germanic cultural traditions reflected broader patterns of heroic commemoration, emphasizing extraordinary individual leadership capabilities and the compelling possibility of successful resistance even against overwhelming odds. These potent mythological narratives transformed the historical Arminius into a powerful symbolic figure who embodied quintessential Germanic virtues and the core cultural values that fundamentally distinguished tribal societies from foreign civilizations. The legendary accounts of the Teutoburg Forest battle often emphasize supernatural elements and divine intervention, which dramatically enhanced the story's emotional impact while concurrently providing a powerful religious validation for Germanic independence. The resurgence of interest in Arminius during the German nationalist movements of the 18th and 19th centuries powerfully demonstrated the enduring political relevance of early Germanic resistance to foreign domination. German intellectuals and political leaders identified Arminius as a foundational figure in the emerging German national identity, portraying his decisive victory over Roman forces as the seminal, initial assertion of German independence that had providentially preserved Germanic culture from foreign assimilation. The construction of the Hermannsdenkmal monument near Detmold in 1875 represented the culmination of this fervent nationalist appropriation of early Germanic history, thereby creating a powerful physical symbol that intrinsically connected modern German political aspirations with ancient tribal resistance to Roman imperialism. The archaeological investigations that began at Kochries in 1987 profoundly revolutionized scholarly understanding of the Teutoburg Forest battle. This was achieved through the systematic recovery of unparalleled material evidence that unequivocally confirmed and significantly clarified the historical accounts preserved in Roman literary sources. The discovery of Roman military equipment strewn across several square kilometers of challenging terrain provided irrefutable concrete evidence for the immense scale and brutal intensity of the fighting that had occurred at this precise location. The artifacts recovered from the site included well-preserved legionary armor, various weapons, and personal equipment, all of which demonstrated the superior quality of Roman military technology while starkly revealing the desperate circumstances of its capture by triumphant Germanic forces. The numismatic evidence discovered at Kokries provided crucial chronological indicators that definitively confirmed the site's identification with Varus's disaster, while simultaneously revealing invaluable details about the battle's progression that had not been preserved in traditional historical sources. Roman coins, many bearing the portraits of Augustus and other prominent imperial family members, unmistakably established the precise temporal context of the site's occupation. While the detailed distribution patterns of these coins across the battlefield vividly indicated the movements and strategic positions of Roman forces during the intense fighting, the discovery of coins that had been deliberately defaced or ritually buried by Germanic victors provided further profound insights into the immediate aftermath and the symbolic significance of their triumph. Artifacts exhibiting deliberate damage or modification hinted at Germanic ritualistic practices, particularly those associated with the handling of captured Roman possessions. Moreover, forensic analysis of the human remains exhumed from the Koks site yielded crucial insights into the demographic makeup of Varus's army and the specific characteristics of the combat itself. Skeletal evidence further underscored that Roman casualties were diverse, encompassing individuals of varying ages and physical states. This finding strongly corroborated historical narratives which often alluded to the presence of civilian support personnel and other non-combatants within the ranks of Varus's ill-fated expedition. The widespread distribution of human remains across the entire archaeological site vividly illustrated the chaotic and desperate nature of the final moments of the battle, with numerous indications of individual, close-quarters combat scattered across the entire battlefield area. Simultaneously, environmental archaeology carried out at the Carissa location offered valuable insights into the specific landscape conditions that critically influenced the battle's eventual outcome, while also illuminating the broader ecological context of the early 1st century Germanic territories. Comprehensive pollen analysis and detailed soil studies unequivocally indicated that the region was densely forested during the Roman period. This conclusively confirmed the significant environmental factors that had provided the Germanic forces with substantial tactical advantages. Furthermore, the identification of ancient watercourses and extensive marshy areas brought to light the crucial geographic constraints that effectively funneled Roman troop movements, simultaneously offering ideal concealment for Germanic ambush positions. The ongoing and diligent archaeological work at Crete continues to unearth a wealth of new evidence, significantly enhancing our understanding of the Teutoburg Forest battle. This work simultaneously underscores the immense value of material culture studies in illuminating historical events that are often incompletely or vaguely documented in traditional literary sources. Among the recent discoveries are additional pieces of Roman military equipment, a variety of Germanic artifacts that shed light on tribal material culture, and valuable environmental evidence that precisely clarifies the seasonal timing and prevailing weather conditions that crucially influenced the battle's progression. Cumulatively, these extensive archaeological investigations have firmly established the Koks site as one of the most significant ancient battlefield sites across Europe, thereby also serving as exemplary methodological models for the comprehensive study of other historical conflicts. The scholarly debates ignited by the Kok archaeological evidence extend beyond the immediate findings, reflecting broader epistemological questions concerning the proper interpretation of material culture and its intricate relationship to historical narratives preserved in literary sources. Indeed, some researchers have voiced legitimate skepticism, questioning whether the archaeological evidence unequivocally confirms the site's definitive identification with the Teutoburg Forest battle. They contend that the material remains could plausibly represent other, lesser-known conflicts between Roman and Germanic forces that occurred during the tumultuous early imperial period. Nevertheless, these vigorous interpretive discussions have, in turn, stimulated considerable additional research, simultaneously highlighting the inherent complexity and challenges involved in accurately correlating disparate archaeological and historical evidence. Furthermore, the public interpretation efforts surrounding the Cox site have opened up significant opportunities for broader educational programs. These initiatives effectively connect ongoing archaeological research with a deeper historical understanding, while also directly addressing the profound political implications of Germanic resistance against Roman imperial expansion. A dedicated museum and visitor center, thoughtfully established at the site, now offers accessible and engaging presentations of the archaeological evidence. Crucially, it also places the Teutoburg Forest battle firmly within its broader and more comprehensive historical context. These thoughtfully designed interpretive programs deliberately emphasize the rigorous scientific methodologies employed in archaeological investigation, consciously eschewing the often problematic nationalist interpretations that had historically characterized German scholarship regarding early Germanic history. The international significance of the Teutoburg Forest battle transcends its immediate, tactical impact on Roman imperial policy. Instead, it extends to encompass much broader and more fundamental questions concerning the intricate dynamics of imperial expansion and the complex array of factors that ultimately determine the success or failure of any conquest endeavor. The decisive Germanic victory served as a stark demonstration that the seemingly insurmountable technological and organizational advantages typically wielded by imperial powers could, in fact, be effectively negated. This was achieved through the astute utilization of superior local geographic knowledge coupled with meticulously coordinated resistance strategies. These profound lessons have continued to influence modern military thinking, particularly concerning the complexities of irregular warfare and the formidable challenges that conventional forces inevitably encounter when operating in unfamiliar, hostile terrain against determined and well-entrenched local opposition. A comparative analysis of the Teutoburg Forest battle alongside other historical instances of successful resistance against imperial expansion has consistently revealed common patterns and crucial factors that empower smaller societies to overcome and defeat much larger, technologically superior military forces. Specifically, the paramount importance of unified and resolute leadership, an intimate and detailed knowledge of the local terrain, highly effective intelligence gathering, and meticulously coordinated timing consistently emerges as vital elements in historical examples of successful resistance to imperial conquest. Consequently, these comparative studies have significantly enhanced our understanding of the specific conditions that particularly favor irregular warfare, concurrently offering profound insights into the inherent limitations and vulnerabilities of conventional military power. The enduring legacy of the Teutoburg Forest battle reaches far beyond its immediate historical context. It encompasses profound and fundamental questions concerning the inherent nature of imperial power, and crucially, the enduring possibilities for successful resistance against foreign domination, even by seemingly weaker adversaries. The battle vividly demonstrated that even the most sophisticated and seemingly invulnerable imperial military systems inherently possessed critical vulnerabilities. These weaknesses could be astutely exploited through innovative tactical approaches and strategically coordinated political action. This profound lesson has served as a continuous source of inspiration for countless resistance movements throughout history. Furthermore, it continues to offer invaluable strategic insights that remain highly relevant for contemporary conflicts involving asymmetric warfare, particularly between formidable conventional forces and elusive irregular opponents. The dramatic transformation of Roman imperial strategy that ensued following the catastrophic Teutoburg Forest disaster established enduring precedents for defensive consolidation. These foundational principles would, in fact, characterize and shape imperial policy for the entire remainder of Rome's vast existence. Consequently, the Rhine frontier emerged as the archetypal model for all subsequent Roman frontier systems. These systems fundamentally shifted their emphasis towards establishing permanent defensive positions and fortifying existing borders, rather than pursuing relentless territorial expansion. Furthermore, the military and administrative innovations specifically developed for efficient frontier management profoundly influenced imperial policy across the entire empire. This crucial acceptance of practical limitations on Roman expansion represented a fundamental and ideological paradigm shift within the imperial mindset. It explicitly acknowledged the finite nature of imperial power while simultaneously establishing the robust strategic frameworks that would prove essential for sustaining Roman authority and influence for an impressive 4 centuries thereafter. The profound and enduring significance of the Teutoburg Forest battle, therefore, resides not merely in its immediate military and political consequences. Rather, its true importance lies in its powerful demonstration that historical outcomes are never truly predetermined or inevitable, even in the face of apparent advantages in technology, organization, or resources. The decisive Germanic victory vividly revealed the continuous and paramount importance of strong leadership, meticulous coordination, and bold strategic innovation in ultimately determining the success or failure of any military operation. Concurrently, it powerfully highlighted the distinct and often decisive advantages that an intimate understanding of local knowledge and a unified, resolute resistance could provide against seemingly superior and more powerful opponents. These timeless and profound lessons continue to resonate powerfully within contemporary strategic thinking. Moreover, they offer invaluable historical perspective on the intricate and evolving dynamics of conflict between vastly different types of military and political organizations in the modern era.